I would like to welcome you all to the Thursday, March 27th, 2025 meeting of the Bellingham Planning Board. I'd like to start with a Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to ask Nick to lead us in the pledge. Flag is to my right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I assume some of you have the agenda for this evening. Based on the topics tonight, we're going to go a little bit out of order for a brief moment. Rob, we have a continuation for a public hearing for 123 Mendon Street. Is that correct?
Correct. So continuance for 123 Mendon Street. They're currently undergoing peer review. So they've requested a continuance to April 22nd. The decision deadline is May 31st.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Bill.
Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? I would call for the vote.
Bill, aye.
Bill, aye.
Nick, aye.
The next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for a special permit associated with 180 Payne Street, a 55-plus active adult overlay district. Rob, can you give us a quick overview of where we stand right now?
Sure. So everybody can hear me, right?
No.
Hopefully that's better. All right, excellent. So good evening, everyone. So just a couple of housekeeping items first. So just as far as disclosures, I just want to disclose that I am actually a abutter to the project, not a direct abutter, but within the 300-foot abutters certified list. With that, I'm not a voting member of the planning board. My disclosure has been noted with the town clerk, and I am an abutter to a direct abutter. So I just want that disclosed. Another item, too, I just want to introduce the gentleman on my left is John Paglarini. He's the Director of Planning in Woonsocket. I realize that there's a lot of members here from Woonsocket, so we feel that it would be nice to just have him up here with us. So just wanted to mention.
Okay.
Now with that, to just continue on, so this application in front of us, it's a special permit for the 55-plus active adult overlay district. For people who are not familiar with that overlay, that was passed in 2017 at Maytown meeting, and the purpose of that overlay is, and this is, I quote from the bylaw, to foster a range of housing types and provide the flexibility to encourage development that will allow for context-sensitive design and creative site planning. Now with that, this is the first time that the planning board is hearing this application. So with that, there's going to be a lot of new information that's put on the record tonight. Mr. Chair, would it be helpful if I just go over what will most likely be the format for this public hearing this evening?
Please.
So what is going to happen tonight, the applicant is here to present the project. They'll have an opportunity to present. There's a presentation here. At that point, I will have a few comments that I just want to state, and then really this is going to be a heavy public comment hearing. I know there's a lot of people here who have concerns with the project. We want to hear from you, so we're going to open up the floor to the public to speak. And then the planning board may have some closing comments as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that now would be a good time for the applicant to start the presentation. And we can go from there.
I would like to turn the floor over to the applicant. Could you please introduce your team here this evening?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the members of the Planning Board. My name is Andrew Flynn, and I'm with Coppermill. Carly Morrison is with us as well. She's at the computer. This is Mark Callahan, Rob Michaud with MDM Engineering, John Cusich with Bowler, Tom Schultz with the architectural team, and Lindsay Wilson with Nixon Peabody. First and foremost, I want to say thank you very much to all of the members of the public for taking the time to join this evening. We understand that this is taking time out of people's personal lives to be here tonight, and especially after a long day. And so that really resonates with us in terms of understanding how important this project is and how important the New England Country Club is to everybody. We're very grateful for all of the engagement that has happened over the past 18 months or so with various stakeholders at the town level, at the staff level, at the resident level. And we're very grateful for everybody from both Woonsocket and Bellingham who took the time to join our public meeting on Tuesday night earlier this week at the middle school. We are here tonight to engage in an initial discussion. We view this as the first inning of what is going to be a long process, which I guess is fitting for opening day today with the Red Sox. But please know, we are not here. It's not this is a one-time meeting and we're going to say this is what's being proposed and presented, and then we're going to go start doing it. We're here to really engage in a two-way mutual process. In terms of feedback, we even heard feedback on Tuesday night that we have already started to incorporate into the design, into the plan. And I understand that we need to earn the trust and credibility of this community. We understand inherent skepticism on a project like this. I think it's because, unfortunately, over the past 50 years, developers around the region have earned a poor reputation of jamming a project down a community's throat, being menaces during construction, and leaving a path of destruction in their wake. So we understand that inherent skepticism is rightfully so well-founded. I'm here to say we truly endeavor to take a very different approach and a very deliberate and measured approach to everything that we do. We are all locally based from the region. We understand how important this property is to the town of Bellingham, the town of Woonsocket, and the entire region. I understand, I guess, I'll have to ask you in a couple of years if we manage to earn your trust and credibility. But all I ask for tonight is a degree of open-mindedness and a willingness to engage in the discussion. In terms of the various feedback that we've heard to date and over the past 18 months, what we will get into shortly and will be reflected in what you'll see this evening is a number. The adult overlay district that was passed calls for a variety of different options. And as we tried to synthesize those options with through a lens and spirit of stewardship, because we know how important this property is, especially with other golf courses closing in the region, and all the other various dynamics that are at play, that one of the top priorities we heard was, please keep the golf course. And that is something that we have kept as a high priority, as a public golf course, as an 18-hole golf course. And we explored various elements of either decommissioning the golf course, making it a 9-hole golf course, but ultimately what we're going to propose and present tonight contemplates retention of the entire golf course with one minor modification on the 9th hole and an expanded driving range. In terms of other priorities that we heard, the preservation of really the nature and the fabric of the beautiful trees and forests that are on the property. We agree and understand and appreciate that this is a rare, it's a rare setting, especially, in the greater Boston region where there's really a pristine nature to the 330 acres of the golf course. And accordingly, we've really tried to take a thoughtful and reasonable and responsible and Olmstedian approach to how we're seeking to retain and preserve that. The other key priorities we have heard are ensuring that the traffic is thoughtfully designed, managed, directed, and we will get into that in more detail. We heard further feedback on that earlier this week, and we're already in the process of exploring supplemental modifications. We know and we understand and have experienced personally on a daily basis the conditions on Payne Street and the dip in Payne Street, and we'll present tonight some ways that we hope we really can help improve and enhance that condition and drive further safety for a number of reasons. We're very grateful to Mr. Lucier, to the planning board, to members of the police department, the fire department, various other departments here in the town of Bellingham. Thank you for being here from Woonsocket tonight. And again, this will be the first of an ongoing dialogue. And we had sign-in sheets on the way in. If you happen to miss them on the way in, we'd be grateful if you could provide your contact information on the way out. Our goal going forward is to be transparent and communicative, and we will provide you with our information. And if you want to reach out to us at any time, you are welcome to reach out to us directly. And we look forward to meeting with some of you individually or in different groups. We're working on scheduling a time after, based on our meeting on Tuesday night, with various abutters who have invited us to come and walk through some of their backyards and understand some of the existing conditions. And as part of that, we're already working on how we can increase and enhance setbacks and other improvements. So we're here to learn. What we're going to present tonight is not perfect. It is not final. And the reason we wanted it to be that way was so that everybody in this room and in discussions going forward can have an opportunity to provide input that we can reflect and make sure that, while this site is a bit of a Rubik's Cube, we want it ultimately to be a mosaic that is well aligned with the overlay, the town's housing productions goals, and the goals of all residents in Bellingham, Woonsocket, and the surrounding area. And we want it to be a mosaic that everyone is proud of, feels aligned with, and feels like their fingerprints are on the final product. So with that, I'll present a couple slides up front. We're then going to hand it over to a couple of the discipline area experts, with regards to traffic, civil engineering, other elements. But as Mr. Chair alluded to, we are keen to make this a very discussion-oriented dialogue, and we are here. We are happy to be here, as long as it takes to answer any and every question tonight. And we look forward to being back here in a couple weeks and in the coming weeks and months. So thank you again for your time. I'm sorry for a bit of the long-winded introduction, but with that, Carly, if you want to go to the first slide, that would be great. In terms of, just to orient everybody with the property, so it's 330 acres. And as you can see here in somewhat of a rectilinear fashion from west to east, left to right, you can see the 18 holes as they're currently laid out across the golf course. And I will say that I know that there were some prior incarnations that maybe were presented or discussed informally with the town, prior to our involvement. And even as we, explored kind of the matrix of different designs and housing programs here, what we looked at first was kind of spreading them all throughout the property. And what that was going to require was a lot of roadways throughout the property, a lot of tree removal, and ultimately kind of the cannibalization of that middle part of the site, which we believe, and we have heard from many in this room and many outside this room, that that's really kind of a sacrosanct component of this property. Carly, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Based on all of the feedback we received, we really endeavored to, in the spirit of keeping the golf course open, keeping the golf course complete, keeping the golf course as it is, and preserving all of the trees on the interior of that site, we have designed a housing program with a western node and an eastern node. In terms of what is proposed here, and again, I will say we received some great feedback on Tuesday night that we're working to incorporate. That feedback is not incorporated in what we're presenting tonight, just to let everyone know. We didn't have time to incorporate it over the past couple of days, but we will reflect that going forward. And so in terms of what this represents, we will not be building in or impacting or destroying any wetlands. And that is something we have worked very closely with the Conservation Commission, with wetlands engineers and environmental engineers to ensure that all of the wetlands inside the boundaries of this project are preserved and maintained appropriately. In terms of how we chose these areas, it really was driven again by trying to keep the mass of all of the forested areas, treed areas, golf course, those quiet respites, other elements that exist across most of the site, is really keep that intact and undisturbed. We know there's a lot of animals that live and breed there. We know that there's a whole range of different tree varieties, obviously a lot of wetlands and streams, and so we really tried to treat that with a high degree of deference and respect. The kind of northwestern node that you see here, that is generally located where the existing clubhouse is, and we thought that was a sensible place to start because that area is already developed to a certain extent and is well suited to kind of accommodate further housing development. And then on the far eastern side, again, really in the interest of maintaining all the forested lands in between, we concentrated the other element there with access out to Rentham Road. There will be no access going down into Woonsocket. And I will say too, from an architecture standpoint, we have tried to embrace the town's standards, the town's spirits, and also the regional standards with somewhat of a traditional New England style approach. As you'll see tonight, the western node really reflects that. The eastern node we had presented initially, and as you'll see tonight, with a little bit more of a contemporary application. But based on feedback we heard on Tuesday, we plan to update the eastern side to be a bit more traditional in nature. The site fully complies with the active adult overlay as it was approved and written at town meeting and by the select board. We hope and we feel consistent with the principles of that overlay that this can be, a joint opportunity to generate housing, 55 plus housing, allowing those who have lived in the area for years and years and who maybe, want to stay here and would like to age in place, but have limited housing options available, particularly, those that may have mobility challenges or accessibility challenges or, don't or can't shovel the snow over Boston's long winters. So we hope that this could be a destination and a community for those who want to age in place, and also, where they'll be close to others and not necessarily isolated in a single family home, with the benefit also of not impacting the school system. And so I will turn it over to the design team here. The other concerns we heard on Tuesday night, as I referenced, were a lot more feedback and input regarding traffic. And I just want to say that was incredibly helpful. We are certainly not there on traffic. We have more work to do with the town, the police department, the fire department. Life safety is a critical priority for us in any project, and particularly in this project. And again, thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it, and we look forward to engaging with you for many months to come. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Tom Schultz with the architectural team.
Thank you, Andrew. For the record, Tom Schultz from the architectural team, Chelsea, Massachusetts. So the overall strategy of the master plan is it's essentially two distinct sites that we've addressed somewhat similarly and then somewhat differently. And what I mean by that is each site is designed as a village. It's meant to, all of the folks that live there come home and feel like they're arriving at a village. You want to go to the next slide, please? So I figured I'd start on the west parcel. This has more of an organic feel to it. It's organized kind of around a central drive or roadway that has a radial sort of layout to it, and then a central town common or village green, if you will, in the center there. There are 7 buildings on this side of the site, 5 of which are 5 stories, with some structured parking, mainly in the center of the site. The building on the bottom right is 4 stories up against the golf course. And then we have a central clubhouse. All of the buildings will have amenity space within them and lobbies, some roof decks even around that, the town center there, but the bulk of all of the sort of amenities will be in that central building. Want to go to the next slide, please? So we, as a means to understand some of the topography and then also the separation or closeness or proximity to the property line, we did these site sections. And the site sections are a great way to kind of give things in absolute terms. So you can understand, how tall one structure is to another, and then also as it relates to the topography or the grading. So section AA cuts through, and you can see that key plan up in the top right. It might be small for some folks in the back, but so section AA on the top is cut through sort of in a east-west direction from Payne Street on the right, going into the site, and then building A is that first building you'll see. So you can see that we are set back about 600 feet from the nearest structure and 410 feet from our property line over there. And then you can see the buildings, how they're varying a little bit with just the topography interior to the site, and how some of the buildings are, the rendered blue shades represents those residential units, and the yellow represents the corridor sort of running down the center of the building, and then the gray underneath represents what would be a parking structure. So you can see there's 4 levels of units over 1 level of parking in that particular building. Section BB and CC are cut north to south, effectively, from Rentham Road. Again, on the right-hand side of the page, you would have Rentham Road. And for those of you that have traversed Rentham Road, it's kind of a low area down through there, some wetlands right up against the road. So you can see that that depiction as the topography, it raises up towards our buildings on the left-hand side. But again, you can see some of the, we're 1,100 feet from some of the structures on Rentham Road there in the BB section, and then section CC we're about 900 feet. Want to go to the next slide, please? And here are just the sample elevations of this side of the building, or this side of the site. So the west building elevations kind of have that transitional or traditional, more New England vernacular. You can kind of read sort of a base, middle, top to them, where the sloping roofs look like an occupied attic to really help the scale feel a little more like a 4-story or a 4.5-story building in places, and then sometimes a 3-story, and then we have other roof decks that aren't represented here that are actually a 2-story structure. Then you can see that we've added some level of articulation and detail to the facades where we're grouping windows or maybe celebrating some of the interior spaces differently from a bedroom to a living room. We have some balconies to add depth. And then we've also added some direct entry units on that spine road that goes through the site to try to humanize the scale of the buildings a little bit and create some more 2-story elements like a townhouse would be. Next slide, please. So moving over to the east parcel, I think we have one more that's a little closer. Yeah. This planning is a little more formal in plan or figure ground, as we call it. But the topography on this site that you're going to see in a minute with the site sections is much different than the western side. There's a lot more topography to manage here, and we're really trying to use the buildings to manage that topography. So there's going to be a lot more height differential between each one of these building footprints. They're set on kind of plateaus as they go up through the site. So we call the first building really A and B. It's really one structure. There is some structured parking on the north side there, about 50 spaces. The one difference between this site and the western side, the eastern parcel, each sort of nesting of the three pieces have their own amenity space, and you can see that those buildings are sort of C-shape or U-shape and created together to create an outdoor space among them. So we're using the buildings to create some more outdoor space that we can activate and associate with the interior amenities of the buildings. The next slide is the sections, site sections. So you can see these site sections. These go all the way from, again, north to south. Rentham Road is on the left, and Woonsocket would be on the right. So very similar to if you're going up Payne Street into Woonsocket, running south, there's a very significant grade change there. So you're kind of seeing that same thing on that end of the site, just through our driveway in this case. So you can see that we're pulled back from the Rentham Road pretty considerably, as you probably noticed from that entry drive, just because we don't control the land up against Rentham Road there. So we have to drive down quite a bit of ways into our site. The buildings are, as Andrew mentioned, kind of justified towards Woonsocket, and we have about a 40 to 50 foot buffer from the parking lot to our property line on that southern side, but the buildings are removed from 250 feet plus from that southern property line. All of these buildings are 5-story structures on this side. We're just trying to make the buildings as compact as possible to allow for as much open space preservation as possible. Next slide. And then these are those more contemporary buildings that Andrew mentioned that we're taking another look at we were trying to provide a little bit of optionality or variety for the future residents. Some folks might want a little cleaner contemporary look, but we're going to go back to the drawing table on that and study how we can bring in more of that New England vernacular on this side of the site. And with that, I'll hand it over to Bob Michaud for traffic.
Good evening, Robert Michaud, Managing Principal with MDM Transportation Consultants based in Marlborough. We'll have an opportunity at upcoming hearings to really dive into the particulars of traffic and transportation, but what I'd like to do tonight is just talk about the approach that the project is taking as it relates to traffic. It's been subject of ongoing conversations with police, fire, planning, public works, and we want to carefully craft a transportation solution here that addresses some pre-existing issues that we're now aware of through those conversations, and that provides a thoughtful, safe, and industry-compliant way of having people come into the development, leave the development, whether you're in a car, if you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, etc. For context, this development really is situated in two pods of the larger site, the western and east sites. For every 100 units that are built, we're expecting there to be about 20 to 25 total peak hour trips generated, just for some context. We know that at full build-out, once both the easterly and westerly portions of the site are fully operational, that the trip increases relative to the highest volume intersection in the area, which is the Pulaski Boulevard signalized intersection nearby at Payne Street, would realize about a 4% change in volume. So there's absolutely going to be a measurable impact from the project, but one that can be managed, especially based on occupancy and monitoring over time. As individual phases come online, there'll be opportunities to actually refine certain aspects of how traffic works in this area. We spent a lot of time talking about what access made sense, and Payne Street became a focal point for us. As many are aware here, perhaps if you've been golfing at New England Country Club, coming into or leaving that facility today is difficult because of where that driveway is located. It's located on a high-speed section of Payne Street. It's difficult to see people coming around the corner as they're coming from Woonsocket Way, traveling north in particular. And that was an early discussion point that we had with public safety officials, fire and police, to understand what we could do to make that situation better. And what's being proposed now is an elimination of that driveway, really, or conversion to an emergency access only driveway, and to replace it with a fully signalized intersection that's roughly 800 feet further down the hill, that's much more visible, much more easily controlled, and that we can introduce design elements in that accommodate the needs of people who travel via car versus pedestrians, bicycles, etc. And so what I'd like to do is just hit the highlights of where we currently are with that infrastructure package with a focal point on Payne Street. So the next slide, if you could. This provides, of course, context, which indicates with green dots locations or intersections that we have included in the traffic report that are going to serve as the primary gateways or intersections to or from which people travel to get to either the westerly or easterly portions of the site, right? And again, this will be covered in more detail in a subsequent hearing, but we've taken a lot of time. About a year ago, in May of last year, we actually started this process. We went out and counted these locations to include school activity and normal traffic volume conditions, and we've used that as the basis to project forward to understand how to design some of the infrastructure here. Next slide. This is a location along Payne Street that will serve as a primary means of getting into or out of the westerly portion of the site. This is a location that it's at the foot of the hill of Payne Street. So as you're traveling from Woonsocket Way, you travel past the current driveway at New England Country Club, continue down the hill. This would be literally at the bottom of the hill, roughly about 800 feet or so away. And the vision here is to widen out Payne Street to allow for an exclusive turn lane to get into the property, to introduce separate turn lanes to get out of the property, and to signalize that intersection. We also anticipate building sidewalk systems from the property, a pedestrian crossing of Payne Street, which would be signal controlled, that would then integrate with the existing sidewalk systems on the west side of Payne Street. All of this can be achieved within the public way or on property that's under the control of the particular proponent here. So this is something that we engaged early with the police and fire department on, in combination with the driveway at the top of the hill, the existing driveway. There'll be dual means of access to the westerly portion of the site. And we know that operationally that this will work quite well. It will be more visible to people who are approaching it. It will function at a very high level, and it will be designed in a way that's coordinated with the Pulaski Boulevard signal, which is just to the north of this location. The next slide indicates the existing location of the New England Country Club driveway. It may be somewhat hard to see here, but the idea here is that we don't want that to serve as a primary means of access to the site. It's simply not an ideal location. It's difficult to see. It's hard to maneuver into and out of it. But it does serve a viable role in allowing emergency vehicle access into the property as an enter-only driveway that can be controlled and hopefully will not be used in any level of frequency. We've spent a lot of time looking at sight lines and travel speeds in and around that area, and we believe that we can achieve a design that meets all of the safety-based criteria for visibility for emergency apparatus that would need to use this if they needed to or wanted to. And we also understand the high rates of speed on Payne Street, and this type of a design would be augmented with a radar-based driver feedback sign, which have been proven to be effective in alerting motorists of how fast they're actually going on a roadway in real time. And that type of control tends to meter speeds a little bit better than not having that form of control. Finally, the next slide really just shows the relationship between those two driveways. The Woonsocket way would be to the right here. As you travel from the right area to the left page, that's the northbound movement. That's the movement where you're going down Payne Street. As you come around that corner, you'll have well in excess of 600 to 800 feet of clear sightline visibility to any queuing that occurs at that signal. And the signal itself, which is represented with some cars that are shown there in colors, would on average have about a 4-car queue. Right? So it's not a location, once it is signalized, it would be problematic. It would work quite efficiently to safely allow people to get into and out of the development, and also provide fair visibility for folks who are approaching it. So we've got a ways to go on infrastructure, but those are the major infrastructure improvements that we envision will be part of the development. We, of course, will get into more details during the peer review process, and we are continuing to engage with public departments to get their input, even on Tuesday night, understanding local perspective on what folks are dealing with on Payne Street in particular are important pieces for us to understand so that we can advance these designs, refine them, and be responsive to addressing some pre-existing issues that people have been dealing with. So with that, I'll hand it back to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Carly, if you want to maybe just go to the last slide. Yeah, so I think with that, Mr. Chair, certainly would welcome any questions. And thank you, everybody, for your time and allowing us to go through the presentation. We appreciate it.
Rob, can you give us a quick overview of the application you have in front of you?
Sure. So this is actually on our website, but there was a memo that I drafted dated March 20th that just had some preliminary comments in this letter. And in here, just a few items to note, items that hopefully Coppermill can look into, but there was a submitted photometrics plan that showed some light glare in the Gloud Lane neighborhood. In here is noted the limited screening for the Gloud Lane neighborhood in Woonsocket, which is associated with that eastern development. The other items in here regarding traffic, I did note some issues on Payne Street. Most people who, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Payne Street. There are some significant concerns with elevation change and site distances. So those were noted here, as well as queuing issues that are relevant at the Rentham Road and Payne Street intersection, as well as the Rentham Road, Pulaski Boulevard, and South Main Street intersection. We do have preliminary comments from the fire chief as well, and one of the items that I just wanted to note in this memo was just the eastern development having one means of access and egress through the boulevard entrance, which is not ideal. And then the rest of these comments are regarding some density calculations, verifying grades and widths of roadways, and let me see here. There's also going to need to be some significant coordination with DPW regarding adequate capacity for utilities, whether it be sewer or water, and fire prevention flow capacities, which I know the applicant has started the process with the DPW. That process is ongoing. And with that, I will just like to also add, I know the applicant mentioned something referred to as a peer review. For people in the audience, if you're not familiar with the peer review process, what we will do is when the applicant has taken comment and revised the plans as needed, the plans will go out to a third-party peer review consultant, which will be paid by the applicant. And what they will do is they will review the engineer plans, our zoning bylaws, and traffic impact as well. So that will be an ongoing process as well. And I guess with that, Mr. Chair, it might be a good time to turn this over to the public.
Is there anybody you want to introduce from the audience?
I see actually there's State Rep Mike Soder here who's at a
Representative
microphone
Soder.
right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm looking at this, and I'm absolutely, I don't know if I'm surprised, or if I'm shocked, or maybe they didn't do their homework. I'm not really sure. But this went to town meeting. This overlay for this over 55 gated community, owner-occupied gated community, is what was sold and what was voted on in this chamber right here. It was years. It was years, a year and a half. The Board of Selectmen, and I think Don's here. Don was on the board. We had meetings, open meetings, community meetings, breakfasts, BBAs, you name it. We had all of Pulaski Boulevard businesses that are all small business owners, and a lot of them do live in town, utilizing this project and tying it in to a complete overhaul of upgrading that area. You just went from probably, at best, that other proposal that was sold to all of us as owner-occupied townhomes, 800 at max, to almost 2,000 people on a road that is one of the most dangerous roads that we have in Bellingham. Look it, I'm all for, I want us to have affordable housing. The original project had owner-occupied townhomes in it. They were ranging from 500,000 to where they were going to be, but they also had condos that were going to be in smaller buildings, not 5 stories high, but condos that you were going to actually build that were going to be smaller bedrooms that seniors could buy and go into it. We don't need affordable housing. They've already hit their max for affordable housing. This isn't an NBTA zone. So I'm going to tell you something. I am the state rep, and I know that you're going to ask for funding, and I know that you're going to put affordable housing in there. As long as I'm standing here, I'm going to fight you tooth and nail on anything that you ask them from the state. I mean, this is the worst case of bait and switch, Mr. Chairman, that I've ever seen on a project. This is not what there's a lot of people in this room, and I know there's a lot of people from Rhode Island here. I know there's
Excuse me,
people
please
from Rhode
don't
Island.
interrupt them.
I know there's some people from Rhode Island, and it's a very sticky situation for you. I get that. I understand that. But the people that were here, that live in this town, that pay taxes in this town, and went through a process, which I have to tell you, in this town for an overlay, was one of the most, went through tons of meetings, tons of input, tons of overview, so that when you guys got it to the planning board, a lot of the problems and the questions were answered. It was so much community engagement. There were hundreds of people at these meetings, whether it was at the senior center, whether it was at the Coachman, wherever they had them, wherever there was a VFW meeting, anybody who was welcomed in to talk about these programs, what was going to be built here, was going to be built here. This is not going to be an over 55 at the end of the day. It's not. You can't control it. You know you can't control it. And what's going to happen is it's going to end up being an affordable housing, and you're going to ask for that because you know right now that's a main objective of the state is to build affordable housing. And nobody wants affordable housing more than I do for a lot of people in this community. But this isn't going to be affordable housing. It's going to be $4,000 a month. You tell me what senior can afford $4,000 a month right now. Because they are not going to give you, the town is not going to give you low-income status to build this to get the cheaper rents. But you're going to go to the state, you're going to circumvent the town, and you're going to use the MBTA Act. I know what you're going to do, and you're going to do it. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to stand in your way every damn moment I can because I'm not going to allow this project to not go what these people voted for. It's simple. They voted for it. It's a town meeting. This isn't Boston, guys. This isn't a city council. This is a town that votes on these projects whether they want them or not. And they gave you an overlay, and the only reason you can present this is because of that overlay. And look, Mr. Chairman, you guys, you're gonna have to figure this out, and you're gonna do what you want, but I'm gonna watch it very carefully. And there is no way they can guarantee you that this project is not going to have or turn into another MBTA zoning disaster. You guys did a great job with your MBTA zoning. You did it actually better than anybody in the state, and I commend all of you on the planning board for doing it, and you went to the people, and they voted on it, and it's approved. Don't get bamboozled by this, because that's what this is.
Thank you, Representative Soter. Before I open it up to the public, I'd like to, if you've been to any of our meetings, we have some ground rules for large venues. What I like to do is if a question's been asked twice, it shouldn't be asked a third time in regards to a topic. What I will do, and I want to make sure the applicants see it, I will ask for a count of hands on people that support what has been said in regards to traffic, density, and that will be noted in the record. So also, try to rotate who asks questions. We've always done it at a planning board, at town hall, and I would like to do that again here. So again, once something's been asked 2 times, we'll try to move on to a different subject, but beforehand, I will ask for a show of hands. Also, please direct your comments to the board, and when appropriate, the applicant will respond or Rob will respond. I think that's fairly simple, and I think it will make the process go a little quicker. You also, I would like you to come down, state your name and address, and ask the questions in front of the microphone.
Okay, my name is Ray Marcotte. Now, you got a gentleman there from Woonsocket. Are you representing the city of Woonsocket?
No, sir, we represent the town of Bellingham.
Okay, so in other words...
Excuse me, sir.
In other words, then...
Let me interject for a moment. However...
You people are going to build 1,600 units, not 8, 1,600 units according to this over here. And you're going to tap into the Woonsocket sewage system? You think you got a chance of doing that? Woonsocket sewage system right now is having trouble already with what they have it existing right now. And you want to tap in 1,600 more units into it? And not only that, but you show the center over here with nothing in it. I know what's wrong. It's because it's a ledge. And you know what? It's only a matter of time before we build on that. Ledge doesn't mean nothing. They'll just put a slab and they'll build over it. So it's not going to be 1,600. It'll probably be 2,000 or more. And then again, you say you're going to make Payne Street larger. There's houses on both sides of the street. How much larger can you make it? And then Woonsocket, down the bottom of the hill, I live there. The traffic is like this all the time. We have a hard time. What are you going to do with it?
Well, let me answer your first part of the question, sir. You ask about who we represent. We represent the residents of Bellingham. In addition, the abutters are our neighbors. We're going to look out for the abutters.
I'm a butter.
Fine, we're going to look out for you. You can ask questions. And, you know, I don't want you to think we're not going to listen to you.
I'm on the bottom. My name is right here.
I understand, sir.
Okay? So,
Do you have another question?
so the thing I'm asking you guys is, he's talking 800. It's not 800, it's 1,600.
Excuse me, sir, let me try to, before
Okay.
Mr. Soto
You
responds.
say it right here, 8 and 8.
Sir,
8 and 8 is 16.
the first proposal was for approximately 800 units of over 55. That's what Mr. Soto referenced. This is substantially more.
It was 400 units.
And then
400 units with a
Okay.
maximum of 2 people in.
another thing, okay? You're talking 55 plus. You're going to tell me all 1,600 is going to be 55 plus?
That is the proposal at this point in time. Do you want to address that, sir?
I'll touch on that. And thank you for your comment, sir, and Representative Soto. I appreciate you being here tonight. And, you know, I would be very grateful for the opportunity to engage further. I think two things I will say is there will absolutely be no affordable housing in this project. And I would love to work with the representative in the town to understand how, from a statutory standpoint, that can be ensured in perpetuity. And so that's a question, you know, that legally I would love more information on how we could ensure that, which it could be a condition on the permit as well. Second of all, it will absolutely be 55 plus, and it will be fully enforceable as 55 plus. That is our intention, and we want to be held accountable by the town and all of its residents. With regards to the proposal that we shared tonight, you know, I do just think it's important to contextualize, and I know Representative Soto was referencing certain elements. So the whole design here is driven by the overlay that was approved. The overlay as approved allows for approximately 2,500 units on this property. And that is why we didn't propose 2,500 units, we proposed 1,600 units. And what I would say is if there's an appetite for more, you know, to do single-family homes instead of this, it comes at, you know, it comes at a cost, and the golf course is going to have to close and go away. Now, we heard throughout this process that the priority is to try to achieve all of it. Retain the golf course, particularly given, you know, the one locally that was just converted into a solar farm, which doesn't really help serve too many people. But if that's not the priority, and you'd like us to explore different approaches, that's why we're here to listen. But for us, we need to, you know, it's helpful for us to understand what folks' priorities are.
Can I just respond to him for a couple seconds? You're lying. It wasn't 2,500 units. The golf course had to stay. That was the deal, and everything that was made to make this work. The golf course stayed. You have the open space. You were redesigning holes. It wasn't. You know, it's an insult to the people that are elected officials that went through this town and held these meetings and had these meetings. You got the damn support of every one of those people. It's not easy to get an overlay approved in this town by a 2/3 majority. So don't sit here and insult me that it's 2,500 units. It wasn't 2,500 units, and the golf course was going to stay because it was going to be donated as open space. Dust off the prints, go look at what was designed. What you're doing is not right. And honestly, Mr. Chairman, you should get your House counsel to have put an article in town meeting, on a special town meeting, and take their overlay away.
On my left-hand side, state your name and address, please.
Fred Milgram, 703 Village Lane, the only 55 over housing in town. We have 66 units, all townhouses. We see ambulances at least 2 or 3 times a week. I can't see them going up 5 floors to pull somebody down if there's a power outage. Where we have a small, what do you call it? Senior center. See, I have senior moments too. We have a small senior center. I see no plans here for a community house or transportation areas where they can get to a senior center. The cost of them is immaterial because when people sell their primary home, they want to downsize, and a lot of them go to condos. They don't go to condos 5 stories up. They go to something that has parking within their interior garage. They don't want to walk across parking lots. They're crippled. Most of our people are over 75 years old. There's a lot of other, what would you call them?
Concerns?
Yes. conveniences was the word I was looking for, that you don't have here, that people that don't want to travel can travel, need transportation to doctors, shopping, and whatever. I don't see any planning for any of that in this plan. So going along with the legal aspects, if this comes to a town meeting, I'm voting against it.
Would you like to address any of those comments?
I really appreciate your comments, and I really appreciate the input regarding some of the services and community elements, and I think that is something we could certainly come back with in more detail. And so thank you for highlighting that and bringing it to our attention.
In regards to public safety, that will probably be a topic from one of our meetings as we move down the road. Again, this is the first time this has been presented to the planning board. We have a lot, as they said, it's only the first inning. I'd like to go to my right. Sir, can you state your name and address?
Greg Houghton, 27 Rome Ave. Thank you, Mike. You said it best. You guys want questions? My question is just to the board. Will you please ask every question possible? Ask them why they say they're not destroying any wetlands and their Payne Street entrance is 20, 30 feet next to the wetlands. It's going to be destroyed. Can
I just interrupt you for one moment?
Sure.
Rob, is conservation going to be part of this process?
So they already were part of the process initially. So the applicant has gone through an ANRAD process, which essentially what that is to certify the wetlands on site to basically delineate properly and get that approved through conservation. It is the best of my knowledge that you have not submitted a notice of intent yet with the Conservation Commission.
According to Hannah, they have not.
Yep, which if you're doing work within 100 feet of the wetlands, that is going to be required to do so.
So yes, so that will be looked at.
Okay, thank you. Also, I'd love you look at the traffic study closely. I saw you gentlemen and lady, whoever Carly is, the other night. I love how from top of Payne Street down to the new entrance, it went from 800 feet to 600 feet. My wife and I love you. We drove off of Fairview where we live, and you can't really see anything because there's some beautiful trees there. So either you're going to ask our neighbors who live in homes, not structures, they're homes, to cut down their trees, or are you going to ask the town to take it from eminent domain so you can see your new intersection? So I'd like the board to look into that as well.
That is something we will look into.
Okay. And then the sheer volume, the traffic report as well. Bob, I raised the question the other night. In the traffic report, it says our main intersection, everybody knows it, is going to be at 104% capacity with this project being completed. So I just would love that looked at, what that 104% means. We can't get through there as it is now. How are we going to do it in the future?
So to hopefully put you a little bit at ease, and they can respond. But Rob mentioned a peer review. We will hire our own peer reviewer for traffic. Separate from them, however, paid for by them, but hired and chosen by us. Transportation may be a standalone meeting or a night when we have only 2 topics. But transportation is a concern for the town, and we listen to the town residents.
Okay. I appreciate that because I'm also worried they're selling us something. Page 10 of their proposal, to me, is an altered map of what the town's proposal was for the housing in the town. So please look at everything very carefully and continue to engage us and keep everything on the website so we can see it and bring it to your attention.
We will do that, sir. As Representative Soder mentioned, we vet projects thoroughly. While you may see in the web that we don't listen, we listen to residents, we take their advice, we deal with the applicant. And I hate to steal your line, this is the first inning of maybe extra inning ballgame. It may take more than 9 innings. But I want to encourage everyone who's already asked a question to keep coming to these meetings. Your input is valuable. Is there anything you want to address that I didn't hit on, sir?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do just want to acknowledge and affirm, we wholeheartedly agree that traffic is a critical and acute issue in this project, and that is why it's, to date, been one of the primary focuses, and we, heard even more voices on Tuesday night. And, you have my personal commitment. We are going to take that away over the next couple weeks, and, we want to engage in that discussion further. And as you said, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to speak for you or the board, but whether there's a standalone meeting on transportation alone, we will work through that, but there is a lot of work to be done on that.
And again, sir, just to remind you, we'll have our own expert vet this process out and vet out the transportation. And I will get to that when it comes to the board for our comments.
Thank you, because I can't imagine 1,000 cars by the broken culvert on Rentham Road, because that's where the other entrance will be.
Thank you, sir.
Over 1,000 cars.
Thank you. I think you were here next, sir.
Yes, sir. Cody King, 189 Glad Lane in Woonsocket. It's a pleasure
Welcome,
to speak
sir.
with you guys today. I'm sure many of you remember my name. I stand here to address you guys about this urgent issue that threatens both the quality of life in our community and also the natural beauty that also surrounds it. Our neighborhood has brought with us today a petition with a full listing of over 730 signatures protesting this development. Thank you. For decades now, Mr. Andrew Flynn and the New England Country Club have pursued plans to destroy the forests that lie between Bellingham and Woonsocket. If this current proposal is approved, it will dramatically increase traffic in areas meant to be safe, peaceful, and quiet. NECC's development will bring up to 3,000 new residents into our area, residents who will rely on our stretched municipal services, including fire, rescue, police, trash collection, and more. We must ask the Bellingham Town Planning Board, can our community truly handle this much additional strain on our infrastructure and our municipal services? The environmental consequences of this development are equally as concerning. The destruction of over 300 acres of forests and wetlands is not merely an aesthetic issue. It's about maintaining a balance and the quality of life that we as tax-paying American citizens work so hard to preserve. The wildlife in our area, countless species will have their habitats destroyed. Where will they go? It's heartbreaking for me to witness the sacrifice of natural resources when there is an abundance of alternative solutions that are readily available. Instead of bulldozing wetlands and forests, why not consider revitalizing abandoned or underutilized areas for development? As you stated, take, for example, Bungay Brook Golf Course, who converted their golf course into housing. If your golf course is not generating you and your shareholders enough money, do the same. We urge the planning board, relevant authorities, and developers to reconsider this development because the community does not want it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, on my left, can you state your name and address,
Mr.
please?
Chair, is it possible, excuse me.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair, would it be possible, excuse me,
Yes, sir. I'm
would it
sorry.
be possible to just make a quick
Absolutely. I know there's some big areas there.
Yes. So thank you for your time tonight. I think it is very important because you referenced some gross mischaracterizations that have been brought to our attention that have been circulating over the past few weeks. So this plan is specifically designed to keep the pristine nature and trees and forests intact. Prior contemplations of this assumed doing exactly what you suggested, which is, and right now, we are, sir, of the 330 acres, 280 of them are being preserved exactly as is.
My backyard isn't part of that, though. You're about
Excuse
to
me.
literally turn my
Sir.
backyard.
Sir, I
Sir.
gave you the courtesy to listen.
Excuse me,
Can I-
sir. Direct your comments to the board.
Yes, sir.
Allow him an opportunity to answer. No one interrupted you during your questioning. So please, provide some decorum this evening.
Sir.
Turn it back to the applicant.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting us know that there are adjacencies to your property. I would love to come to your property and understand it so that we can potentially redesign it. But I have to say respectfully, For you to say we are destroying 330 acres of forest and wetlands is just factually inaccurate and grossly misleading. So if we specifically designed this to keep 280 acres completely untouched. If that's not a priority of folks, and you'd rather we spread them all throughout the property, let us know. That's what we're here to listen. But this was identified as one of the 3 housing sites identified by the town of Bellingham, and everything we are proposing here is fully compliant with the overlay that was passed. And so we took our lead, and we took our lead from what was passed democratically at town meeting. We are here to listen so that the project can be shaped and sculpted and pushed and pulled to be reflective of what the community views as the right balance of priorities. So all I would ask is, these statements being made publicly and even by you here tonight that we're destroying 330 acres of wetlands is inaccurate and misleading and alarmist. And if you'd like us to work with you and your neighbors where you live, we would love to come meet with you and your neighbors and walk and understand sight lines and topography and how we can make the project better. But as I asked in the beginning, we're here, and all I ask for tonight is a degree of open-mindedness. And we understand this is something that people feel very strongly about, but we're here to listen. And, it's not helpful when sweeping, inaccurate statements are made like that. But we would love, and I would love to get your information after this, and love to come meet with you and everybody else on your street.
That sounds good. I will provide you guys a petition, all the signatures. Who should I provide it to?
That'll be entered into the record, sir.
What's that?
It will be entered into the record.
Okay.
If you provide it to the town planner.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Joseph Calamati, 300 Center Street, Bellingham. I have several questions regarding the proposal. How many units are you going to put on the west side?
Yes.
800 on the west side.
Okay. And you say 20 to 25 cars at peak hours, times per 100. So you're talking 400 units, 400 vehicles an hour coming in and out of there. Is that correct? Would that be a correct statement?
No, and this is in this traffic study that you'll have access to and that will be subject to more detailed presentation at other hearings. The number of trips for 800 units is going to range from about 160 to 200 total. And those trips are going to be dispersed to about 20% of them are going to go to Woonsocket Way. The rest of them are going to go out either through Rentham Road, Pulaski Boulevard, and a series of other streets in town, all of which are documented in the study. So it wasn't our intention to get into those types of details tonight because that's really a lot of detail that will be covered later, but that's the general gist of it.
And I got another question. How did you determine that there would only be 4 vehicles in a queue for a light at that exit from this development?
Yes, thank you for the question. As the board chair mentioned, there'll be a peer review process. Traffic engineering relies on models that are industry standard models that are used to estimate those types of delays and queues. And so those models were used to estimate those.
I travel that road every morning at between 8 and 8:15 coming from Woonsocket. And there's at least 10 to 12 cars backed up every morning at that time when I come through at the light.
At Pulaski.
And they're backing all the way up past the fire station towards Woonsocket. So how you can say there'll only be 4 vehicles per light cycle is beyond me.
Right, and through the chair, just to be clear, Pulaski Boulevard and its intersection, that signal carries almost 3,000 vehicles an hour. There will be far less traffic coming out of our development that there are at South Main Street and other streets that are part of that signal. So they're 2 entirely different things. So I understand your question. We look forward to answering with more detail, and the peer review process will actually get into those types of details.
And my last question has to do with water. Currently, before the Finance Committee, we have a request to fund a new well this year and money to do a study for a second well because our wells are not producing to capacity. while the state may say we're allowed to take X amount of gallons out of the ground, our wells can't even meet what they're prescribed to do right now. And further, 1,600 units, I would presume 2 people per unit. My wife and I live alone. I don't water my lawn. I don't wash my car. We take showers and baths, we run a dishwasher, and we run our washing machines. And we use 30,000 gallons a year. Now, you multiply that by 1,600 units, you're talking 48 million gallons of water. Where are we going to get it from?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And again, thank you for your time tonight and for the feedback and perspective. With regards to water, that is something that's similar to transportation, is currently under a detailed review. I am not here to be evasive or to not answer your question. That work just is not complete yet. And that will be peer reviewed. It'll be done by us, and it'll be peer reviewed as engaged by the town. And we continue to work with Public Works and others. And I think similar to transportation, and again, I don't want to speak for the board, but whether it's in this forum or in a separate forum that we might hold, infrastructure is a topic that is worthy of probably its own meeting and discussion, and we certainly owe you and will provide you more details on that.
Thank you, sir. That is correct.
Thank you.
On my right-hand side,
Hi, I'm Jennifer Izzo. I live on Empire Circle off of Fairway Road. That road is a nightmare to pull out of every day. I can't imagine having another even 500 or 600 cars on that road. I'm surprised, 30 years I've lived there, I've not been killed. Between the people coming up the hill that we can't see, now you're gonna add more to that, not to mention the traffic lights. We have more traffic lights in this town than this town ever needed. We have 2 major roads from one end of town to the other. It takes me 25 minutes to get to Market Basket. Now we got a Center Street light that's always green for Center Street, never, ever green for 126 to go north. It is absolutely insane that you would consider a project like this. We all agreed to something much smaller than this. We didn't agree to this shit. Nope.
thank you, ma'am. Before I go to the next person, we've had 3 comments about traffic and the impact. How many people agree that it's going to be a problem? Please, show of hands. Please be aware.
Yes, sir.
It's almost unanimous, okay?
Noted. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I think for right now, we'll move on to topics other than traffic. They noted the importance of traffic to the residents of Bellingham. I'm going to just keep going back and forth. To my left, sir. Please state your name and address.
My name is Victor Anger. I live at 202 Payne Street. And my concern is long before the traffic impact on a project of this magnitude. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of site work. How much blasting, because we know that there's a lot of ledge up there. How much blasting is going to be anticipated? Because a lot of homes in the area are old and they have stone foundations, and that's a real concern of mine.
Great question, sir.
It is a great question, and thank you for that. What we presented tonight, part of what has driven that is trying to minimize and really consolidate the impacts. Some prior conceptions of this had construction and development and infrastructure all throughout the 330 acres, which would require destruction of trees, a lot of blasting of ledge. And so the 2 areas that we have chosen, the west side is already generally cleared and ready and flat and already improved. And then the other side, we wanted to mitigate it and keep it as condensed as possible. So again, part of this design, it is not, I know there have been some suggestions that this is driven by other intentions. It actually this design has been driven to consolidate and minimize the impacts as opposed to spread them across 330 acres. So we don't feel that in this plan there will have to be too much blasting. To the extent there is blasting, that is something, we can talk about in further meetings.
So to be more specific in regards to blasting, from the board's perspective, as it has come up, we've dealt with public safety, and people will be notified if and when blasting occurs, and the fire chief will be part of that process.
My concern is the foundations.
I understand, sir.
Thank you.
Colleen Langelo, 100 Payne Street. One of my concerns is, and you said that it would be a definite 55-plus community, and I brought this up the other night, is that people are having children older. So you are saying that it will all be 55-plus people in there, but people are having children in their 40s, which means that there will be children, or at least teenagers, living in those homes possibly, which is going to impact our school systems, and you have not addressed that. So yes, it will be 55-plus, but what about the teenagers or the possibly even smaller children living in those communities? Because 55-plus does not mean that there would not be school-age children there.
Thank you very much for joining on Tuesday and again tonight. And I will say your point was a very valid and, it's one that stuck with us. And I don't have the answer for you tonight, but we took it away and we asked ourselves the same question. What we want to understand better, the restrictions, regulations, compliance requirements on how to address that issue. And that is something that certainly at our next meeting we will have an answer to. But we thought it was a very good observation and something that we need to get more clarity on ourselves.
Thank you for your question, ma'am. The school department will be part of the vetting process. Gentleman to my left.
My name's Gregory Duhamel. I'm 30 Glow Lane, Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I came here to speak to you guys about some of the history of that land. I'm just curious if any of you guys know the history of the land up there.
I've lived here about 30 years, so my history goes back that far.
All right, perfect. In 1661, this is all land that was considered the Rehoboth North Purchase, which would eventually go in the hands of Roger Williams. It was land that was owned by the Pecanoket tribe. It's a Pocasset tribe out of Massachusetts, out of Rhode Island. This is a tribe who, specifically Squanto, if you're familiar with Squanto's story, Squanto was Pocanoket. That land is said to be native lands. The deed of the original land in 1661 states that one parcel of land shall be dedicated specifically for the Pocanoket tribe, and we don't see that today. I just want to come here to inform you guys that the Pocanoket tribe, currently of Pocasset, the Wampanoags, they are currently investigating that site, which is behind Glow Lane, for potential Native American burials. So I just wanted to let you guys know this, and if you guys didn't know this, now you do.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Gentlelady on my right.
Hi, everyone. Samantha Schmidt, 541 Rentham Road. We're the abutters to the access road off Rentham, obviously. So we just have a few concerns with the access road I wanted to put on record, one being drainage, as the applicant noted, and we all well know, it's all wetlands there, downward sloping to Rentham Road, low points, it gets very flooded at certain times of year. So I know there's been some basins proposed, but I think alongside that road with all that blacktop, which obviously can't absorb the groundwater in the same way, there's going to be redirected water. My concern is down into my backyard 24/7, but obviously that will flow into the creeks that go below the road as well and might impact a lot of the surrounding properties. So that's one drainage concern we'd like to be looked at a little closer. In addition, light pollution along that road. I'm not sure how it's being planned to be lit, but if some of the lights could be maybe lower or whatever, obviously complies with safety, but doesn't kind of shine bright into the neighbors' yards, and sound as well. A lot of traffic coming in and out. Hopefully we're not getting as much litter on that road as we do in Rentham Road because it's 55 plus, who knows? But just those are some of our concerns as the direct abutter to that access road.
Thank you for your question. Let me answer part of it before we turn it over to the applicant. Stormwater management will probably be a standalone night.
Okay.
To address stormwater in abutting the facility on the facility.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair?
In
So it's me.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, can I just add one item to that? So
Certainly.
just to note, as the chairman just mentioned, stormwater is going to be a very large peer review process in this. And that basin that you were mentioning on Rentham Road, that's actually one of the comments that was in this memo. So just for the applicant to be aware, I know that there's a spillway that's proposed as well as what looks like a dewatering pipe that's directly discharging towards the Rentham Road area with a connection into the Rentham Road drainage system. So just put that on the radar that there's going to have to be a really good look into that, because any type of overflow discharge into the right-of-way is problematic, very problematic. So just to note that. Sorry.
No.
Yes, thank you very much for your question.
And I just want to say thank you as well, and to reiterate, stormwater is certainly a critical piece of this, which will, the detailed engineering will continue on that. But more so, I wanted to just acknowledge and appreciate your comments tonight, and we heard similar concerns on Tuesday night from some Rentham Road abutters and those centric to that portion of the property. And, we are going to go back, take your feedback, try to evaluate other ways to address exactly what you're referencing, whether it, regards to setbacks, lighting, sound, acoustics, and again, I don't want to invite myself, but it may be helpful for us at some point to come by and just understand the different kind of proximities and sight lines. And if you don't mind, maybe Carly at the end of the meeting could get your information, and would love to follow up with you directly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go to the next question, if you haven't signed in already, please do so before you leave, so we can get everyone, even those who ask questions, but everyone in attendance, their name and address, so the applicant will respond as needed. Sir.
Hi, I'm Jerry McGovern. I live at 5 Luke Street in Rentham. I'm a Rentham abutter. I know you want to move on from the traffic, Mr. Chair, but I'd like to ask that I did not see anything in the documents online nor in the presentation today that talked about the traffic being studied going east out of the eastern campus, going towards Rentham or Cumberland. There were the green dots that showed the intersections did not show anything east of Lake Street and West Rentham Road. I don't know if I just missed that, but if that's in fact the case, I'd very much like to have that added to part of the traffic study. Traffic coming out of that eastern end and going right, going east towards Rentham is probably going to, if they're not going to Rentham, they're going to make a turn on Jenks Street, which is a very, very narrow road, into Cumberland, and comes to that light at Diamond Hill Road. That's going to be a significant impact on not only the tidiness of that road, but the traffic that's already on that road that comes from Bellingham, other points going east into Rentham or into Cumberland or those places.
Let me respond for the board. That will be part of our peer review. We will make sure the peer review addresses that.
Yes, again, thank you. And as we continue to expand the scope and the discussion of the traffic analysis, that is certainly something we can incorporate.
Thank you. And
thank you, sir.
Just one more comment quickly to add to Mr. Calamati's comment about the water. Every abutter in Rentham is on well water. So I'd like to make sure that everyone is aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. On my left-hand side, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Richard Picard. I live at 734 Bound Road, Woonsocket, and also 0 Bound Road in Bellingham. The way my house is situated, half the bedroom is Woonsocket, the other half is Bellingham. So last night I slept in Bellingham so I could speak here tonight.
Sir, that's very creative. I want to thank you for that.
Dual
And I want to
citizenship.
welcome you to the high school. If you haven't been here before, I want to
Beautiful high
welcome you to
school.
the
I
meeting.
love this place. I'm here tonight, I was going to talk a few things, but I'm just going to pick up on one thing. Being my age, when we went to school, you know, I tell my kids I used to use an abacus, and then when I went to college, it was a slide rule. They still don't know what that is. So I just tell them, yeah, I went to school on a horse, and then when the horse didn't want to come out of the barn, I walked to school uphill both ways, you know. But anyhow, one of the things I wanted to speak about is the rainwater runoff on Bound Road going into Bellingham on my property. I get a lot of erosion every time it rains. And I had brought this up on Tuesday night, but unfortunately I didn't have the facts tonight. I just threw a couple of things together. And I even have copies you want to follow. I even got little charts. So bottom line is Bound Road is 2.1 miles long, but I rounded it off to 2 miles. So that's about 10,560 feet long. The width is 33. So that gave me quick math of 348,480 square feet. So I converted the square feet to acres, or 1 acre is 43,560. So an acres of Bound Road equals to about 8 acres of property. So when it rains, you're going to have 8 acres of rain because it doesn't permeate into the ground, it's asphalt. Unless there's a crack in the road, then we'll lose a little bit. You know? So gallons of rain per acre from 1 inch of rain. So I went to the USGS website, and an approximation on the chart, it says 1 inch of rain is equivalent to 27,154 gallons per acre. So out of the 8 acres, the total gallons of rain from 1 inch, 8 times 27,154 is 217,000 gallons. 232 gallons of water every time I get 1 inch of rain, let's say for an hour, coming by my house. And it washes out the dirt road, part of Bound Road. And I keep filling it in, but the problem is this water's got to continue going down to their site. So if you're assuming 1 inch of rainfalls in 1 hour, then Bound Road would generate 217,232 gallons of water runoff, assuming 100% of runoff efficiency. But if you want to do some other math, that can include some of the properties. So bottom line is, this water is going to be going down quite a bit. I also went online and I found out more information. And I took the month of the year of 2024. On their chart for water mitigation, I think it was on page 9, they took an average from different sources. They say, 5, 10, 20, 25, 100 year cycle. It was an average of rain. Well, unfortunately, the average came quite short. So just for 2024, for the month of July is 3.8 inches of rain, and August is 4.13, September was 3.94, and October was 4.65. So that's 16 inches, or 16 and a half inches of rain in 4 months in the last year. That water went down Bound Road into Bellingham and washing that away. Where they are going to place a couple of these houses is right on the road itself. This water's got to go someplace. And it's right up tight. I think it's on your chart, 608. It shows how the building and the parking lot, building be here, the parking lot is going to go right up to the stone wall in the Rentham line, Bellingham Rentham. The water is going to have someplace to go. I was reading about how they're going to put these wells in, catch basins with covers. I was wondering if that was anticipated when he designed this for this extra amount of water. So quick calculations for those 4 months, it came up to about 3.5 million gallons of water 4 months that came by the front of my house into Bellingham. I sure hope you have those calculations, because you're going to get awfully wet, or you got to have in-ground swimming pools on the bottom of your buildings, one or the other. I'm not being facetious, I'm just saying, pay attention to what's going on. So that is one of the concerns that I'm bringing. I have others, but this particular one, I'm concerned about where this water is going to go if you build this. I do not want it to come back on my properties. I don't want to keep filling it in. So that is my point for this evening, is groundwater runoff. Now, I'm pretty sure the city of Woonsocket is not going to dig up Bond Road and Glow Lane and put in a rainwater drainage system for millions of dollars. They're not going to do it. So I would suggest that this should be looked at sometime. And thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for...
Sure, thank you very much. One comment, sir. Sir. When I was growing up, I know my father grew up in Newton, but every school my father went to was a mile away from home, and it was uphill both ways.
Yeah.
But he had to come home for lunch, too. My initial response, sir, and I'm going to ask for a show of hands in a moment. We're going to discuss stormwater at one particular meeting. I'd like to allow the applicant to address it, and then I'll ask for a show of hands on how many people have a concern with stormwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we do appreciate those specifics, and it helps further contextualize, all of the challenges that we're trying to navigate. And again, stormwater is a critical element of this, and we will be bringing back a lot more detail. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Patty Bishop. I'm at 18 Plymouth
Can
Road.
you get a little closer to the mic, ma'am?
Yep. Patty Bishop, 18 Plymouth Road in Bellingham. And I'm more on the north, obviously the north side of Bellingham, so I don't have a lot of concerns personally, like with the traffic or well, I do as a resident of Bellingham. But my question is, when I look at these designs, first is, are residents going to be buying or renting these properties?
That has not been fully determined yet. At the moment, they are intended to be rentals, but there is flexibility.
Okay. And if they are renting them or buying them, I know you said that it's not affordable housing, but is it affordable for people who are 55 plus in retirement?
That is our intent, is that it is not going to be, I don't want to speak, but low income, affordable, government certified housing. But our hope is that it is lowercase a affordable and attainable. And part of the way that we can get there is, by having a healthy amount of units on site so that it will keep prices down. But that is the intent, is that it will be attainable to those in that demographic of 55 plus.
Because when I look at this and I see and I hear amenities and common rooms and everything else, I see what most 55 plus is now, which is either you buy for $550,000 starting, or you rent at $3,500, which for, say, my in-laws who wish they could get out of their house with stairs, couldn't begin to move into.
Right.
At 80 and 84, and look all the time for a 55 plus, and would love to be in Bellingham near their grandkids, but to have something like this is completely, if it's going to be that expensive, it's not realistic for 55 plus.
No,
And that's what I see as a concern, is that that's not going to be affordable for the residents of Bellingham who are retiring and want to get out of a mortgage. That's going to be nicer than 3/4 of the houses in Bellingham.
So I very much appreciate and agree with your perspective. A lot, what we've heard from many different folks over the past 18 months in this process is exactly what you alluded to, is folks, and I don't want to generalize specifically, but perhaps in their 80s who are living in a house that is not very ADA or mobility friendly, and that most of their kind of net worth and equity is tied up in that house for retirement. But if they want to sell it to unlock that, then they have nowhere to go. And so we do hope that this could be a destination on that. And to your, observation on the amenities, and is that going to elevate the prices? Our hope and our belief, and we believe it to be true and we have seen it to be true, is that the way to unlock, because we also don't think there should be no amenities just in the interest of pricing, but the way to unlock both, which is affordable units, attainable units for folks perhaps in their 80s, but also making sure that there are on-site services for them, that there are on-site health and wellness activities that are, kind of quote-unquote higher end. The way to achieve both of those is density is what unlocks all of those. Because if you spread the cost, if there's a small number of units with very expensive amenities, then those small units need to bear the cost for all of that, and it becomes very exclusive and very high priced. If you can spread the cost of those high-end, quote-unquote, amenities over many more units, then the rents don't get impacted, the rents don't get pushed up, and all of those folks can pay lower rents and still have access to services and health and wellness and community that they, need and deserve. I appreciate everything you're saying. We have more work to do. Certainly this plan and the whole philosophy that we want it to be a collaborative process, but it's still very much a living, breathing organism, and we have more work to do. But we really appreciate, your perspective.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes.
Hello, my name is Varla Jeleno Smith, and I live at 85 Jenks Street in Rentham. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned about the environment, specifically water. Do any of you know what an underground aquifer is?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Where is the water for this project coming from for drinking?
Rob, would you like to take that?
Yeah. So right now, the proposal is to have the town municipal water service, which with that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of impacts related to a 1,600 unit project, and the question becomes, does existing infrastructure handle that type of development, which the applicant has to work with the DPW to figure out what exactly those impacts are. But to answer your question, right now the proposal is municipal water service.
An aquifer does not know what a town line is, and it's very possible that the aquifer that you might be digging into impacts Woonsocket, Bellingham, and Rentham, as well as Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I answer?
Absolutely.
So in response, so you're absolutely right. So one item to note, we have a Zone 2 aquifer protection area in Bellingham, which is mapped. So, the aquifer limits are shown. The one item to note too is, to your point, our services are through wells, so it is a draw from aquifers. We don't have a reservoir, so just
Exactly.
for clarity.
And I think there was a question at the other mic regarding the wells, that the people at that end of Rentham, we have only our own wells. It means that we must rely on our wells even to put out a fire, if that were to happen, or for them to pump out of some of the nearby ponds. I think that this project is disturbing in several ways. The number of people, and also, what is the foundation requirements for a 5-story building? How deep must they go for that foundation?
I would recommend the applicant take that question.
Thank you, and we appreciate your time tonight. As we alluded to earlier, we understand wholeheartedly the concerns regarding infrastructure, including water and stormwater, and we will have a standalone meeting, again, whether it's through this board and this forum or a separate one that we will host. And we owe you and all people present all of the details on all of that. And so we don't have those with us tonight. Some of those studies are still underway, but you have my personal word, we will follow up with you and everybody on that. With regards to foundations, we can include some of the engineering in our future. The truth of the matter is, the way buildings are built these days, you actually could build it just right on the ground. You wouldn't have to necessarily remove any meaningful soil, which again we hope can be less disruptive. So there's different building means and methods, but again, our hope, our whole guiding principle has been to be as minimally disruptive to the beautiful environment there, and the key tenet of that has been to keep 280 acres completely untouched.
Okay, one more final comment.
Okay, ma'am.
I believe that part of the abutting on the east side is a land trust that is actually held in 2 states and 4 towns. Is that?
I'm not aware of that, ma'am.
Okay.
Is the question for the applicant's property
think,
or abutting property?
I am an abutter of an abutter, okay? I'm on the opposite side of Jenks, even more east than the east buildings they're talking about. But I believe that the field I look out onto, at the end of the field, where it's wooded, that is where the end of NECC Properties is? Okay, that field, I believe, is in a land trust. 4 towns and 2 states.
Okay, that,
Yep.
I'm not, I mean, we would be happy to look at the surveys closer. I don't believe any of the land inside of our property is in a land trust. However,
No, it abuts.
understood,
It abuts.
understanding that adjacency,
Yeah.
these are precisely the types of components of the project that we would seek to improve and enhance. Again, this is day 0 with an initial proposal, and that's exactly the type of adjacency and kind of fact that would further inform how we think about setbacks and everything else. So I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. I can't really touch on the specifics of it, but we will look into it further.
Okay,
ma'am, thank you very much, ma'am. I would encourage you to keep coming to our meetings. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Robert Barnes, I live on Payne Street. I'm one of the new kids in town here. I'm 5 years in as a resident. Just have a question, an open-ended question for you and for the town. This is in regards to public safety. In terms of, as we look into the future, if this project comes to fruition, what are we going to do in terms of funding and support for our public safety agencies? For the police department, the increased demand that's going to be asked of them in terms of not just public safety, but also to traffic enforcement. And for the fire department, the increased demand that's going to be placed on them. There's already increased demand for EMS services with this residential building. Regardless of the age level, there will be a demand on the service. Fire suppression, water has been mentioned, that's an issue. So, what are we going to do in terms of adequate water for fire suppression, hopefully pressurized hydrants. Also, too, for a 5-story building, a high-rise response in terms of additional equipment to handle a situation, not just in terms of if the building is constructed, but also too, for the construction phase of the project, there'll be increased demands. In terms of EMS services, what are we going to do in terms of funding and support as the demands increase for this project?
Thank you, sir. Life safety will be a topic for a future discussion as we move along. And I can assure you, you'll hear from the police and fire chief. You don't mind me answering?
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think throughout this whole process, and it will continue as such, life safety is a key priority. And we have been working with fire and police, and we have more work to do, but that will continue to be a priority, and we are committed to making sure that we address and make sure that it's properly programmed and covered for all those needs going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Name is John Shottier, 67 Glode Lane, Woonsocket. Unfortunately, I went to the Tuesday meeting, And I heard many things that I'm not hearing tonight that really surprised me, and it may also surprise a rep from Bellingham. Okay, there was talk about a 15-foot buffer from the property line on Glow Lane. Okay, my home right now is right in back of the East Campus, as I've seen it up on there. In addition to that, there's 50 feet of parking, okay? 65 feet total, and then you're going to start building these monstrous buildings. These are not small. That rendering doesn't do them justice at all. If you want to see them, go to Franklin. I mentioned this at the Tuesday meeting, Route 140 Central, okay? There's a bunch of them near Lake Street, and there's more down towards the Big Y grocery store, all right? They're 70 feet tall, okay? So looking out my back window, what am I going to see? I'm going to see that complex. I'm not sure from the slides how many buildings there are. It looked like 3, but there's possibly 5. I know you said there were 7 buildings on the West complex, or, whatever. It's still an awful lot of buildings for a very small place. You mentioned at the Tuesday meeting several times about keeping the golf course. I didn't hear one of the participants bring up the golf course. Not one, but you did many times. Preserve the golf course. Okay, that golf course is basically starving, all right? And I don't know why you want to preserve that. If you're going to put that kind of a complex up, put it down in that hole where the golf course is, all right, so nobody can see it. You don't want to look at those buildings. Again, go on Route 140 in Franklin and take a look at them. That is not even close to what those buildings are going to look like. Okay, that was my comment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate you joining on Tuesday night as well. And with regards to the setbacks and some of the figures you referenced, I think, first of all, it's incumbent upon us, because I think there was maybe some confusion, and what we need to bring to our next meeting is detailed diagrams articulating those better. But just to be clear, that the buildings are 230 feet from your property line. But in addition to that, based on the feedback we heard on Tuesday, we're exploring even expanding those further. And so, again, this is the first meeting of this kind, and we heard a lot of feedback on Tuesday, we've heard a lot of feedback tonight, and we're going to reflect that in what we bring next.
That brings me to a question for everyone here. We've talked about density 2 or 3 times at least. How many people have a concern with the density of the proposal? Please, show of hands. You can just note that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to point. One more on my left.
Jen Rousseau, 62 High Ridge Road in Bellingham. I would like to first thank Gregory for bringing up the issue of Native American land. I'm on the Bellingham Historical Commission. That is something that we would also like to be very involved with, to look into. And, I've just seen, I did not grow up in this area. I grew up in Massachusetts, but not in this area, but a lot of people have. It's one of those towns that people stay in for a very long time. I've seen in the 11 years that I've been here, the history be chipped away at, and chipped away at, and chipped away at, and these monstrous things going up all over the place. And I know it's a huge concern just in general, but I would like to encourage the board to really look at the history of, the significance of the history of each part of these lands and work that into your review. Please.
Thank you very much. Gentleman on my right-hand side.
Hi, I'm Tim Rouse, 30 Jenk Street, Rentham. I'd just like to go back to and ask the board a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to ask the board a question about a recent project very similar to this, and that's the Bungybrook development. Originally, my neighbors and I, we all recall that Bungybrook, when it was proposed, was 55 and plus, and it's not now today. So can the board explain to us exactly what transpired between 3 years ago and now that allowed that originally to go through as 55 and plus, and then turned into what it is today?
I can answer that. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds on separate applications here, but for Bungay Brook, that one was catered to 55 plus, but did not get approved as a 55 plus community.
So it was sold as a 55 plus, but then
Correct. So in the way that I guess the developer discussed the 55 plus being catered to for the Bungay Brook development was 2-bedroom townhouses, mostly master suites on the first floor. A lot of the actual layouts are 1-story living, but that was the intent of the Bungay Brook one. One item to note that's different between Bungay Brook and this application. So Bungay Brook used, I believe it is the major residential special permit process, which is separate from this. That development can be used throughout the town because it's a separate application. For this is a 55 plus active adult overlay district. So in order to utilize that overlay, it actually has to be restricted to 55 plus. Hopefully that kind of answers your question.
So, well, I guess the question then is really, what types of authority do you as the town or any other community have in enforcing that? And when you say 55 and plus, one partner in the property has to be 55, both have to be 55? What are the restrictions, and what regulatory authority do you have to enforce it?
Sure. So it's a good question, and it's something that we have actually reached out to town council about specifically for this project, and I'll get to why. But and really what it comes down to is the deed restriction and the decision itself that would basically state that this is a 55 plus community. I think your question is more of, well, how do you enforce that and monitor it? And one item to note, so in the decision, if it did come down to an approval, we can condition this that essentially, like if it's an apartment, which rentals lead to concerns, but we can condition that the rentals, that there's basically an annual lease agreement that it gets certified that there's a 55 plus signer on that. For the 55 plus ownership requirement, that would be more of a deed rider that's associated with it. So if it changes ownership, that's where it comes into play. The actual legality and details of it, I think would be a great question for town council to answer at some point, but hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Well, it raises a whole lot more, but thank you.
Yeah, fair enough.
Cody Spencer, 244 Blackstone Street. I guess more of a concern than a question. The people in Bellingham just had a 2.5% override last year, just to hire 2 more paramedics to keep up with the growth that we've experienced over the last 10 plus years. And before that, we were heavily relying on mutual aid departments to come help, for any call we had in this town. And I'm afraid that, something of this scale is going to put us right back in that situation. And we're going to be back with another 2.5% override in the future. And it's going to be asking these people to increase their taxes again. So I guess that's just my concern, is limit on public safety resources.
Thank you, sir. That will be part of life safety when we discuss that. You'll hear from both the police and our fire chief, but it will certainly be addressed.
Thank you.
Gentle lady, am I right?
My name is Jessica Goldstein. I live at 101 Glaud Lane in Woonsocket. Like my neighbor John was concerned, I'm also concerned about, I've heard you say the building will be 250 feet away, but the parking lot will start at 30 to 40 feet away. So 30 feet into from my backyard property line will be a parking lot with lights. So rather than looking out into the pristine forest, we will have asphalt smells, we will have car alarms going off, we will have everything that comes along with that, and the light pollution. So what will be a barrier between our neighborhood and this project?
Yes, that was, and again, thank you. And we heard a lot of that on Tuesday night as well. And it's 50 feet, but we're looking at making it even more. But more importantly, we want to come back with ways to address exactly what you just articulated. Basically, how can we make it so that you still look out into a green area and don't have to look out at that? So we'll be back with more on that, but I think it was very helpful, and we plan to come. I know we connected with some folks after the meeting on Tuesday, and we plan to come to your neighborhood and walk with yourself and your neighbors to understand some of those conditions better. Thank you.
Thank you. I see we've come full circle. So you were the starting pitcher tonight.
I can't remember if I was
You're
here
going to be the
before.
closer right now.
I came down to answer that fellow's question about the maintaining of a 55 and older community. Like I said, I live in one, and we're handed a master deed at the passing that lays out the complete rules for who can live there, who can own there, who can own a dog, and the size of the dog, what you can do with your property and what you can't do around your own unit. And the area is totally protected. I've been there for 23 years, and only one person has been evicted. It was when it was first being built. He had a 12-year-old son. The youngest person that can live in our development is 19. The owner's mother the person living there's mother was 55 and let her son and her grandson live there, and they got asked to move. So that's where your protection is.
Thank you, sir. I guess you weren't the final pitcher tonight. Yes, sir.
Hi, Christopher Desjardins, 111 Payne Street, Bellingham, Massachusetts. So my first question, I think, was already answered. These are going to be rental units so far as proposed?
As currently contemplated, but there, that's part of the feedback, and we are open-minded on rental versus ownership.
Okay. And who would own the property if it's going to be rentals?
The entire property, the 330 acres, would be owned by one owner.
Which is who?
It would be our group.
Okay. And you're based out of where?
Well, we're active in Boston, Brockton, Quincy, Somerville, Chelsea, so all generally local.
Not Bellingham?
Not presently.
Right. So you're going to own the property but not be residents of the town?
Well, we'd have a full professional 24-hour staff here to oversee and make sure that it's a great place for all of its residents.
Okay. So a second question is, how do we arrive at the 1,600 number? The 1,600 unit, how does that come about? Based on what?
So the overlay allows for 8 units per acre. And so at 8 units per acre with 330 acres, that's approximately 2,600 units that are permitted as of right per the zoning overlay that was passed. We felt that 2,600 units was too high and would tax all of the things that we've talked about tonight to a degree that would not be healthy. And so accordingly, we are limiting it to 1,600 units. And that's how we got there. And so that's where we are, and we thought it was a reasonable middle ground.
I think I heard some comments earlier about the amount of units was to take care of a need for housing space for the people of the town. Would that be accurate?
I'm sorry.
I thought I heard some comments earlier about creating 1,600 units to provide housing that's necessary for the town.
Well, the town passed, and its residents passed this overlay to encourage and foster 55-plus housing, and the town separately identified 3 sites as priorities for housing production in the town, and this was one of them.
Okay, so there's no studies that have been done that say we actually need 500 units, we need 1,000 units?
Well, I'm going to defer to the town on that, but I think something that we have heard, and I'm not speaking for the town, but with the large amount of industrial that has been implemented in recent years, that there became a asymmetric imbalance for housing, and that housing is a priority for the town, and that 55-plus housing is a need to allow folks to age in place. It's a need locally and regionally for that demographic, and it's something that can be done without taxing the school system. So that's what's informed. We've been trying to align with all of the parameters that were set out by the town and the overlay district.
And being a resident at 111 Payne Street, again, I'm a direct abutter to probably your entry-exit way. And that's a major problem right now, currently, with traffic going up and down Payne Street. I know you said you didn't want to talk too much about that again, but it's a real hazard. I know you've done some studies already. Did you do any studies about fatalities that have happened, major car accidents that have happened?
Those were included. However, they were reiterated to us the other night that we need to do more research, and so we heard that. We haven't done it in the past 24 hours, but that was something that was elevated further to our attention, and we're going to, that'll be included in what we go forward with. And, we understand to the extent you're a direct abutter, we would like to come and stand in your front yard and see what your experience is like every day. Was it 111 Payne Street?
Right.
We won't come uninvited, I promise.
No. It's closer. So yeah, 111. It's about maybe 80 feet from the entrance on the low end of the hill.
Okay.
So right now, if you drive a sedan and you back out, you better be quick about it.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about if you put a light there, that you're going to have some people rushing the light.
Yep.
And that's going to make it even worse. And as far as the pileup goes of 4 or 5 cars, I think that was mentioned in the study, it's going to be way more than that, I'm telling you. It's going to be a major problem for the town.
Again, we hear you, and I think, we'll come back on the traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, if you've been here the whole night, traffic was something we asked how many people felt traffic was a concern. It was unanimous. We also spoke about the fact that they're going to pay for us to do a peer review by a company we choose. So traffic will be one of the biggest concerns we have moving forward, as well as other issues. But thank you very much for your question.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Alex Miller, 10 Kathy Drive. You're going to hate me, but it's about traffic. Has the study taken into account the influx of Amazon and UPS packages that will be delivered to thousands of residents in this?
Rob? Again, sir, it's their study right now.
Yeah.
But Rob can address that.
Can I? I would actually ask MDM to maybe if you can add.
I think, Rob, all of those are components of these traffic studies are comprehensive. They are done at different times of day. They account for public service vehicles, commercial vehicles, civilian vehicles, bikers, and again, I think what we owe everybody here is a whole working session where we get into those granular details so that everybody can understand the different layers. I think we stopped short of that tonight because we were afraid that all those details would put folks to sleep, but we're gonna, based on the feedback we received Tuesday, we received tonight, we're going to further enhance and detail those studies, and then we're going to set up a time where we want everybody to come and, we're going to bring you right into the details on all of that.
Sir, I don't dislike you at all. Thank you for your question, and please keep coming back.
And I may not understand how this is all going to work, but is this going to come to a vote with residents, or is this just for the planning board? I guess I don't understand.
I'll be glad to answer that, Robert, if you don't want to.
It's an application in
It's
front
an
of the
application.
planning board, so the planning board is the one that will be voting on this.
And we take everyone's consideration into play.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're next.
Don Coelho, 511 Lake Street. Just wanted to put things in perspective when I heard the communities that you currently have operating today. Bellingham has about 18,000 or so residents. So what you're proposing is something that's the impact's going to be about 18% population increase over where we are today. So that's why you're seeing a lot of people in the area, not just the abutters, but the rest of the town, being very concerned about this. I'd encourage the board, I know they'll do this, and taking that into consideration, the overall impact. I know there's financial benefits from taxes, but there's also significant costs. And from what I saw, I don't see that type of impact represented in the pros and the cons. So I'm looking forward to, at some point in time in the future, really understanding what that means, because it's a tremendous impact to this town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert Douglas, 501 Rentham Road. I'll make it quick. I just had a question. If the golf course were to shut down in the future, could there be more development on that plot of land?
Yes, theoretically, because
So-
there's up to 2,500 units available.
Perfect.
I think
Okay.
somebody brought up an idea about the other night about would there be a mechanism that could be explored to try to cap that or ensure that that can't happen. And so that's something that, we thought was an interesting idea the other night. But the answer to your question is, as it stands now, you could build up to 2,500 units.
It is possible for more development to follow.
It is.
The initial, okay, perfect. I've lived in Bellingham for over 20 years, and I moved from Quincy to Bellingham because of how Quincy is now, right? It takes 45 minutes to get across town, and I really feel that's what Bellingham is turning into, okay? Over the 20 years that I've lived and worked in this area here. So that's why I'm opposed myself to the project. And one final question. I did notice that your group acquired 585 Rentham Road just a few years after I purchased my property. Would the number of units be possible on this plot of land without that secondary road access?
It's a good question. That was done by the ownership group that owned the property for 20 years. We were
Yeah.
not involved in that, so I can't speak to that directly.
Okay. It is on record that that property was worth under $200,000 and was purchased for $1 million at that time. So I assume, again, this goes back 20 years, these plans. And I would assume as well, without that piece of property, that you wouldn't be able to put as many units up there. Just wanted that on record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one item to that? So Andrew, I appreciate your comment about potential future development, but it's clear in the overlay district that there is a requirement that no less than 50% of the entire site remain as open space. And that can include passive or active recreation, which in this case, the intent of that was to keep the golf course. So I don't think that is a fair statement. There is an open space component to this. So I just want to put that on the record to the neighbors here and the board. And we can discuss it more at greater length at another time.
No, I appreciate it, Rob. And just on that quick, that would, at the 50%, that would still imply, 165 acres of developable land. And we've tried to limit it to 50. But again, I know there's some nuances there, but I appreciate it. And our intentions are pure on it, and we really are trying to keep as much open space as possible.
Hi, Dina Betancourt, Central Boulevard, Bellingham, obviously. My concern is, I know we talked about water, but we already have issues with our water in this town, and we just passed $37 million at town meeting to repair the wells in North Bellingham for PFAS. So Are our wells enough in this side of town to take on? Because we already have issues. I already know that water ban is going to start coming down the pike soon, real soon, that you can't do this, you can't do this. And where is this all coming from to supply all this water? Because we already have water issues. I mean, we just repaired our wells like 10 years ago for over 15 million in South Bellingham. How much more? At the end of the day, this address is going to be 02019 zip code. I think it's great that other towns are here, and I commend them for taking a stance for their neighborhoods and their abutting. But at the end of the day, we as a town, people of Bellingham are going to own this project soon. All the cost that comes to run it, and how much more can we take as a town when we just passed 37 million and then more coming down the pike?
We will have the DPW here at a meeting to address their concerns.
Yeah. Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
So, yeah, I know it's been discussed a couple times tonight, but we're keep referring to the DPW because there is going to be oversight with, they have a contract essentially with two different firms, one for the water capacity and one for the sewer capacity. So they're going to be looking at the impacts by this development, both of those. And the item you mentioned, the override, not the override, the request for funds at the last town meeting, I know that was for the treatment plant in North Bellingham for the PFAS, so, which is all interconnected, so.
Right. It's still all water, issues no matter.
Oh, yeah,
how-
I'm not correcting you,
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
clarifying,
Right,
that's all.
because it said that I don't want those problems to carry on to Bellingham, because we already have our issues with high chlorine and all that stuff that we're constantly treating as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Joseph Calamati, 300 Center Street. There was mention of the meeting the other day. Is there a recording of that meeting?
Sir, can you move closer to the mic, please?
Is there a recording of that meeting that was handled, that took place Tuesday, that could be presented to the board for the record?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Happy to share that.
Okay. And, Mr. Chairman, as a matter of course, I think that all future meetings should be held under the auspices of the planning board so that people can be present and voice their opinions as these meetings roll on.
Thank you, sir. The reason we have this meeting here tonight is the capacity for the room at Town Hall.
Marty Roach, 31 Crystal Way, Bellingham, Mass. I'm a resident of 32 years. We spoke briefly back when Michael started his comment 7.5 years ago with the overlay. Who has a copy of the overlay right now? Anyone up on that stage?
The bylaw? Yeah.
No, the overlay.
The pictures that were shown at the time? No, I don't have those.
Yes, we have the overlay up. I mean, I
Can
have
we
it
please,
here.
can we please have that posted to the planning board website so everybody in this room can read the details of it? Because as a resident, and one, I'm a golfer, two, I've been here for 32 years, three, I grew up in Medway, I used to play in the golf course ahead of time. And looking at these plans up here and where you're putting the buildings, you're abutting almost every piece of wetland on the golf course. And with all that asphalt that's around all those buildings, I'm very concerned of water going into the watershed. And it should have been up there and very detailed there. You also mentioned you started doing surveys on traffic patterns. Do you have that information, and can you present it to the planning board so that data, because that 4%, I don't think is anywhere close to accurate, that type of impact. So I would like to be able to see that, and I want to do my due diligence on that data.
Yes, sir. Again, as we've said the other night and tonight, there's a lot of traffic analysis included in what we already submitted. And based on all of the questions that have been asked, we're going to do a whole supplemental traffic study. So we don't have that tonight, but we'll have it.
But you said you submitted it. Who has that data?
No, so it's available on the planning board website, our submission.
Okay. I will go and get a copy of that. The other thing is, when I had no idea you had a meeting on Tuesday night, where was it posted on public record?
So it technically wasn't a public meeting, it was something we held in an effort to foster further engagement.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind signing in on your way out, if you haven't already, any future meetings that we have outside of this board, we will email everyone directly well in advance for that.
I would suggest that you create a website for the town of Bellingham, this project, so it's public information and all data gets put there, so every one of these people can see it at any point in time.
Absolutely, and I will just reiterate, we're not here to operate in the shadows, we're here to be 100% transparent.
Exactly, and that's what I want to make sure of.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Rick Campano, 70 Elbow Street. Got a couple concerns. I live at the bottom of the hill, and I'm concerned about the runoff water that's going to coming off that project. There's a big swamp in the back of my house that we get an inch of water, it almost comes up to my house. And I know that it goes out by Payne Street, which is always blocked going down the Peters River. So I'm concerned about that. And I'm also concerned, I know you don't want to hear traffic, but I live on Elbow Street. If you know where that is, it's at the bottom of the hill. I can't get out of there now. And one other concern I have is all those buildings are going to be right in my backyard, as far as noise goes off those buildings and traffic and people. About, what you guys are going to do about that. I like to open my windows during the summer.
No, understood. And again, hearing from direct adjacent folks like yourself here and on Tuesday night, it's really helped illuminate a lot of those issues. And as part of that, we're going to be reevaluating setbacks and landscape design. And so I don't have an answer for you tonight, but we will certainly come to Elbow Street and specifically understand all the conditions and how to make sure that the impacts are mitigated on Elbow Street.
All right, I am the elbow of the street, so all this water and everything that's going to come off that project is going to end up in my backyard, and that's why I'm concerned.
Understood. Would we be able to, again, I don't want to invite myself, but
Sure.
would us and our stormwater engineers be able to come over to your house?
Sure.
Okay.
I also worked on that project up there in the 80s when we were part of the group that built that golf course.
Well, we'd appreciate any input you have. We welcome all of that.
Well, he was correct in about saying about the 400 houses and stuff like that. And all that ledge up there has already been blasted for roads, so it's not like you're going to blast in new roads.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. These will be the last three questions for the evening.
Okay.
Gentlelady in the front.
Yeah, Jen Russo, 62 High Ridge. I just wanted to echo a comment that a gentleman said. I grew up in the city. I came here from Brockton. I came here because I don't want it to be Brockton. I wanted to raise my family in a suburb, and it needs to stay like that, in my opinion. That's just a comment. But the other thing, I know this would go for toward the DPW conversation, but I just want to make sure that it's included. The conditions of the roads, I can't speak for Woonsocket, but in Bellingham have just deteriorated in the last year or two. There are potholes absolutely everywhere, even on my street, which is a cul-de-sac. Okay, so that's something that I would like included in that conversation with the DPW, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Fitzpatrick, 63 Rentham Manor in Bellingham. And I'm curious, and a comment also. We just recently got past becoming the warehouse capital of New England. And now it looks like we're trying to become the apartment high-rise capital of New England too. But besides that, I find it hard to believe that you're this far into this project, and when a resident comes up there and says they're a butter, well, we'll sit down and talk to you. Well, why the hell haven't you done that before? We're talking about, well, we don't know what the traffic study is. We don't know what the water study is. I can't believe that you're this far into a project and you can't answer those questions. I just find that unbelievable. What would happen if you failed the water study or the traffic study? You've wasted all this time just to have that pretty picture on the screen. That's insane. Thank you.
My name is Linda Pino. I live at 8 Rakeville Circle in Bellingham. And while I've been sitting here for the last two and a half hours almost now, I've been making a list of questions. I've been making a list of notes and concerns. And I've been in this town for 47 years. And like Jen Russo was saying, that the town is not a town anymore. It's becoming a little city. We're losing that New England flavor. And that's a shame, because this is what we're here for. We want to be in a town. But some of the concerns I have, being an elderly person myself, is my own safety. I'm concerned about if I had an emergency at my house, do I have a responder that's going to be available to help me? That little firehouse at the intersection of Rentham Road and Payne Street has a rescue in there and another vehicle. It does not have a ladder truck. It does not have a water truck. What is going to respond if the rescue is at my house? Is someone going to die in this complex because we don't have another rescue? Do we have this kind of thing budgeted in our budget, forthcoming? How much is that going to cost us? Do we need to build another firehouse on the south end of Bellingham? And where are we going to put it? And how much is it going to cost me in my taxes? Has all that been covered? I mean, I'm concerned about everybody's welfare in Bellingham. But if Bellingham is tied up, with all these other emergencies, who else is going to respond? Is Woonsocket going to respond? Is Rentham going to respond? Do we have the budget to hire more people? Those are some of the concerns I have. The property that you're talking about, this over 55 community, who's going to maintain the grounds? Is that going to be the responsibility of the DPW, or is it going to be a private company? The DPW doesn't have enough people right now to handle Bellingham. We have senior work-off people who are helping them. I'm one. I'm actually signing up this week coming to be part of that senior work-off program, because I know people on the DPW, and having talked with them, I know how lean they are. But not everybody in this room, or the vast majority in Bellingham, are capable of helping because of their limitations, okay? I just happen to be a fortunate, healthy person. Now, I want to know, down the road, with all of this going on, we're going to have to hire, we're going to need a new firehouse, probably. We're going to need more ladder trucks. We're going to need more rescue. We're going to need more rescue trucks, probably. We're going to need more DPW people. We're going to need, where's all this money coming from? You're going to look at me, and you're going to want me to, you're going to raise my taxes in order to get that money? And that means everybody in Bellingham in this room, and people who don't even know about this meeting maybe, are going to have to pay for that as well. So those are some of the serious concerns that you're now going to be confronted with. The other thing, too, is that when I started hearing about this complex, I started getting really anxious and concerned about it and how it's going to impact me and my neighbors and my friends. And not only the people that are 55 and older, but other people who are in their 30s, 40s, and even newcomers into this town who are now going to see their taxes raised because of this complex. The complex itself, is it going to be just for the benefit of Bellingham people? No. You're going to end up with Woonsocket people moving in, and Rentham people moving in, and people from other cities and towns, because they're going to sell their homes and they're going to find out about this over 55. So the population in Bellingham is going to start to skyrocket. We're concerned. I'm really, really concerned. So I need the planning board to make me feel more at ease, if you can, with what's going to happen, with what is proposed.
Can I just butt in for 1 second?
Please.
So just to make it clear, so an application is in front of the planning board. It's not endorsed by the planning board. That's
Okay.
not how this works. So I understand your comment regarding, the planning board needs to make you feel more comfortable about this. Really, what needs to happen is the applicant needs to make the planning board and the public feel more comfortable about
Okay.
this application.
Okay.
So I just want to make that clear, because it's not, this isn't a town project. Questions regarding the DPW taking over the roads and taking care of the grounds. This isn't contemplated as being taken over by the town by any means. I don't want to speak out of turn, but my understanding is that this development would have private roads because it would be a private development. So they would be responsible for taking care of the roads and infrastructure. So just wanted to clarify that. But
Okay.
all of your comments, questions, concerns are extremely valid,
Yeah.
so.
And
And
thank you for asking them, ma'am. In regards to life safety, the applicant has heard how important that is to residents. And we have a list of items we'll discuss in a moment. But yes, life safety is a big concern.
Okay. I'd like to make sure that I'm in attendance for future meetings regarding this project. So
Our
how do I
meetings
need
are
to
up.
go about doing that?
They're posted publicly.
I'm sorry?
Our agenda is posted publicly.
Okay.
I can.
You can go to the website for the planning board for the town of Bellingham.
Very good.
Yeah, so what will happen tonight at the end of any public hearing, if it's going to be continued to a different date, which is initially what's going to most likely happen tonight, we're going to tell you the date, time, location. And just for everyone to note, I know there was concern raised during the initial public hearing because I don't know if anyone's familiar with our RCAN meeting room where we always have our planning board meetings. It's very limited capacity. We had a very large turnout tonight, and that room would not have been able to accommodate this amount of people. And frankly, this is a much better setup with having the microphones and such. So what we're going to do is continue to have these public hearings in this auditorium. So just so everybody's aware. Now, regarding future meeting dates, information regarding applications and such, we're going to always post information on our website. And what we have is, if you go to the Bellingham website under Planning Board, we have proposed projects. And every proposed application that's in front of the planning board, there's a link to that information. And we're going to continue to update that information as we go. I know, Marty, you mentioned a question regarding the actual zoning language. What we can do is we can pull that information out and put it in the actual, in the link to the project, so that'll be a separate item. But please note that all of our zoning bylaws are on our website via E-code. I think this one is Article 28, but that's all viewable on our website. But just for ease of review, we can pull that out. And I think that's all I had.
Okay.
And also, please don't hesitate to reach out to the office. I know I've talked to a very large number of people in the audience, and it's been a pleasure to discuss this project with everybody. So please don't hesitate to call, email, swing by the office. We're always happy to accommodate, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, I'd like to reiterate one thing.
Yes.
The information provided by the planning board
Yes.
is accurate and current information.
Okay.
You may see items in social media, but if you want accurate information, please go to the website for the planning board.
Thank you.
I think that's the end of our discussion, unless someone else has anything they want to say.
Can I it's just very simple. If you have another meeting, I was sitting back there when I first came, I couldn't hear, and I asked the gal up there, and she was very...
I'm sorry, that was my fault, sir.
No, there's no problem, but above and beyond that, I couldn't see anything that you were putting up there, and I asked the other people that were sitting back there, and they said the same thing, so I don't know if there's any way you can, I went up and asked separately if it could be expanded, that's all. Because you put up so many different things of the layout of the land, I couldn't see squat. I'm just being honest, that's all. I don't want trouble or,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Representative Soto, I saw you wanted to speak earlier. You have anything else you want to add?
I would strongly suggest that you, I don't know if your town council's here tonight, but I would strongly suggest that you have a meeting with your town council, your board, to go over that overlay in detail of what it was required, because there's been a lot of stuff mentioned tonight by this developer and that overlay. They weren't part of that overlay. They weren't part of it. And I'd like to just reiterate what Joe mentioned about meetings. There was a lot of public input meetings before the very first planning board meeting. Any planning board meetings, or even talking about the overlay. There was public meetings in different forums in different ways to get to this point. But what I would strongly suggest is that you guys get that overlay and sit with your town council, whether it's legally in an executive session to go over it, to look at that in detail so you know what you're dealing with. Because I think there's a lot more in there that can stop this project. And you guys need to use every tool in the tool shed to keep it the way that people voted for it.
Thank you. I'm sure you want to hear from us, so I will start with Stephen.
Okay. I took a fair amount of notes, many of which have been expressed by the audience already. So I will go over some of them again, but it'll be quick. And this is really going to be an overview. If nothing else, it's so the applicant can understand where my head is at from the outset of this. So the first thing I want to mention is, obviously, when we have an audience like this for an application, it's clearly a large-scale concern. And as a resident of Bellingham for many, many years, I can say confidently, and I'm sure it's the same thing for the Woonsocket residents, that they're all good people, they're thoughtful, and they're reasonable. And as far as I'm concerned, I view all of you as the unrecognized experts as to the short and long-term effects of development in this town. Not because it comes and goes, it's because it comes and stays. And then it comes again. So we are always told what we are to expect from a project, but if it's approved and it gets built, you are the ones that actually see what the real-world effect is. So you come from a place of experience when you have your concerns and your questions, and I can promise you as this board member that your concerns don't leave, my thoughts and how I look at things when you walk away from the mic. I can promise you that. The other thing I want to mention is that for me, their support is important. And the only way that opposition is going to turn into support is going to be through concessions and compromise. And I can promise you, given what I've seen today, those two words are going to be your best friends during this whole process. And then it was also mentioned when I initially looked at this project, and the gentleman mentioned it, that my quick figures, I figured that this project, as it sits now, would increase the population of Bellingham, I thought maybe about by 20%. And that comes with ramifications. Those ramifications are what I think Mr. Spencer mentioned. The first thing that came to mind is the effect on our fire rescue. If this is in fact 55 and older, that's where most of the medical calls come from. We just did a 2.5 override, and that was to increase the paramedics to service our community as it sits today, not as it sits 20% with a 20% increase. And I'm sure none of you, are going to want to, pony up another 2.5 override for an immediate overnight 20% increase in our population. So that was one of the things that initially came to mind. The second one is, it's also going to affect the traffic we've talked about ad nauseum tonight at Crooks Corner. I mean, obviously, we got South Main Street, Pulaski Boulevard, Rentham Road, and Payne Street all converging. It's controlled by a stoplight, a flashing light, 300 feet apart, and you've got a fire station right there. I'm not an engineer, but I'm not sure anything could realistically be done to meaningfully make a difference in traffic. I could be wrong, but again, my initial thought. And just to put this into perspective, another thing that I noticed in Bellingham, this is important for the applicant to understand. If you go down a typical road in Bellingham, you're going to have to travel miles in order to count up the number of homes that will be equivalent to the number of units that you're looking to put in this one area along Payne Street and Rentham Road. And when you look at those roads and you look at the traffic and you look at the housing and you look at the spacing and you look at the density, what you're seeing is a culmination of responsible growth over time that did not take advantage of our infrastructure and respected our community character. And something like this, I think, compromises that. And that's just my initial thought on it. And lastly, I'll just say this. You had mentioned that trust and credibility needs to be earned. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll end by saying this. In order for that to happen, I hope you realize that what you may have the right to do as an applicant isn't always the right thing to do. And if you realize those two things, then you may be on your way to get some type of support. I can't imagine in the form that it is now, but we're facing a trend in town where it's how big can you go, how many houses can you get in how little space, and it's taking away from the character of the community. And that's why you're getting what you have here. So I would pay very close attention to them during this process. And I'm not saying you're not going to. I'm just reiterating it. Okay.
Thank you.
So we've heard a lot of concerns tonight. There's a lot more as well. We'll go through all of those over the next several months to longer, perhaps, on this project. I did take some notes. There's some few things that I've got here that I definitely need to talk about. Number one, I'm not sure how this fits into the traffic study, but Rentham Road, we've got the elderly housing down there. There's people that walk from the Rentham Road elderly housing up through into Pulaski Boulevard, go over to CVS and all that. It's not typically covered in a typical traffic study, but I can tell you if you walk down there on a weekend, you'll see residents of ours walking up there. These are some of the more vulnerable ones. So I'm not sure how we're going to cover that, but we are going to cover that. The second point, the Peters River passes by here. In other meetings and other places, we've talked about the fact that the Newland Avenue area that flows into Pine Grove, which then flows down into this area, certainly has water problems that flow into this problem. So we're going to, when we get to peer review, we'll have that on the list. There'll be a long discussion on that. The next item I'm going to mention is the signaling. The signaling right by the wetlands. I've driven down there and I've seen the flooding. I've driven down that road, and we've actually, had to close it off and take detours through the neighborhoods over there because of the flooding that's down there. So when we get to that point in the peer review, I'm sure it'll have points, but we're gonna ask a lot of pointed questions from the peer review that represents us in this town, and we're certainly going to go there. The next point is the ledge came up tonight, and I can tell you that part of town has a lot of ledge. I remember one of our former planning board members used to comment that, in certain parts of town, they would recommend to the applicant that you want to do some testing around more than normal. Because, I live down in that section of town, and there's ledge down there. There's ledge you're going to run into, and I can't guarantee it's on your site, but I can guarantee it's within a mile or two of that. So my recommendation is you want to do more testing, 'cause it'll help you out later with the discussions, and even, as we get through this entire discussion, it certainly would help you out later just to do some testing there. So that's certainly an issue. One item that is in the overlay district, and I got the overlay district, I'll comment that this town spent a lot of time and energy, and we brought in through the select board, brought in a friendly 40B to alleviate, I'm going to get a little too technical maybe for the crowd, but, this town worked hard on trying to get over the inclusionary housing piece, and I understand that the inclusionary housing piece is waived in this document by the bylaws that are here, but I'm going to point out that I'm concerned that, that this town spent a lot of time on that, and now, you don't want to include that in, because it's by right, and that's something that's by right, but this town spent a lot of time on that. The next item I'm going to bring up is, your plans. I'll go at least take one from the plans. On page C303, the pumping station. It says right on your plans, designed by others. When you put right in the plans that part of the project is going to be designed by others, that we're going to spend a lot of time on that, and we're going to go up and down, and we're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're probably going to want to hear all about it, because it doesn't breed confidence by putting that part of the plan will be designed by others later. That's not something I want to deal with, and when we get to the peer review and all the pumping stations and all that, we're definitely going to talk about that. I would note that one of the residents talked about pumping the sewer down to Woonsocket. We know that that's what happens, and it's going to be an interesting discussion when we get to that, and the water down there as well. So that'll certainly come up. And next piece, on my notes, and this is only some of the things that I know that we're going to drill deep down into. That I know you took notes on the rest of it, but the housing choice. It's one of your selling points, and I look forward to drilling down into that. And, part of that is what you're basically saying this is going to benefit the residents of Bellingham. So I'm going to look forward to hearing in detail exactly how much that helps the residents of Bellingham. And we heard tonight about, the rent that could possibly be charged. I would say that we've got several projects that this board did. Some of them didn't even go in through this board. Some of them were, part of the friendly 40B and things like that, that are charging large rents that the over 55 crowd may not be able to afford. We heard testimony tonight that, residents that are in their 80s and, could have a hard time downsizing and moving into that. So when we have a large discussion on public choice, and housing choice on that, I want to hear a little bit more about how it's going to benefit Bellingham. Things like, we're going to go deep into that. One of the major topics that came up tonight was EMS. I don't know how well you knew before tonight that we had a 2.5 override because we need paramedics. This town was more than willing to pay a little extra taxes because we needed more paramedics. I can't ask our voters to do that again. We got to figure a way that if there's a large project, that the benefits of the project outweigh the problems. And I'm just going to emphasize that the EMS situation, the town spent a lot of time trying to overcome that, and thank you, Chief, for spearheading that. Thank you. you know, the last piece of, well, maybe not the last piece, but the next piece is the lack of buffers on the plans. This board, and I think you can talk to your staff that you have assembled there, this board watches out for the neighbors, and I'm going to want to see what you're doing to buffer some of the neighbors. What, you know, what fencing? I don't think I saw any fencing or, you know, shrubs or trees or anything between any of the local neighbors that are up there, whether they're Bellingham residents or not. You know, we always look out for our residents, and I just didn't see anything like that. The other piece is that, you know, this, and I guess I'll finish here. You commented on your development plan being, you know, maybe developing something later on this same site. I'm going to be pushing to condition that this is the plan you're going to build and this is what it's going to look like. And I'm going to be pushing that, you know, it's not a sliding scale. It's like, this is the project we're approving, and I think the comment was made by the town planner that, you know, some of that's in there, and some of it needs to be held to that standard. So I guess those will be my comments for tonight, but this will be an ongoing process. I welcome, this is the first time, I've been on the planning board for 8 years, this is the first time we've been in this room because of public interest. And I want everybody to understand that we want you here. We want you to keep coming. We want you to come month after month after, you know, it's going to be a long haul. It's going to be. And please do come, and we'll just continue this, and we'll deep dive in lots of things. This is first time that's been presented to us, and we're going to deep dive into a lot of things every meeting. So thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you. Before I make my commentary, like Rob, I do have to disclose a potential conflict. Mr. Flynn, in a former job, I think at Scape, your firm was a client of my firm, Newmark. So I talked to Tom Greeley about your relationship with my firm, and it's a little convoluted in terms of what my job is. I lead the research team for this commercial real estate firm. So I don't always know who all of our clients are, and I've actually never met you before today, but I consulted with Rob and Dennis Frayne and town council, and I have disclosed that potential conflict. But I confirm that we don't have any current projects that we are being paid for by Copper Mill, as you're a relatively new company, but I guess we've worked with you in the past on the sale of different multifamily projects. So I do have to disclose that, and it'll be filed with the town clerk tomorrow. So town council did agree that I could continue working on the board and reviewing this project in an objective manner. So that's what I plan to do, and that's what I always do if a conflict ever does come up. So with that, I do want to, as I mentioned, I'm in research, so I did a lot of due diligence on, the other projects you have going on in eastern Massachusetts. You sort of mentioned them. There's been a lot of articles. So it sounds like you have upwards of 2,000 units in various stages of planning or pipeline, which again is not necessarily pertinent to us, but you've got a lot of irons in the fire. And I think there was a quote from you saying, once we get through X project, we're going to take a breather, and that was sort of earlier this year. It might have been like in the Globe or their Banker and Tradesman, and now we've sort of got this big project here. So I guess my question to you is, are you concerned that Copper Mill has too many irons in the fire at the moment, and how will we kind of navigate all of that in relation to this project? Can he answer? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and again, for everyone's time tonight. Again, I think our other projects are not necessarily relevant here. We take a very disciplined and deliberate and measured approach and really only focus on projects that we believe we're well suited for, and this is one that we have now been involved in for 2 years, and it's one that is a very high priority for us. And, the one thing I would say with regards to some of the other jurisdictions you referenced, and again, I know I need to earn the trust and confidence of this board in this town and surrounding towns, but I do think if you checked with some elected officials and other stakeholders in some of the jurisdictions you referenced, they would attest, whether they agree or disagree, they would attest that we engage in good faith and do listen to the community.
Thank you. I won't really belabor kind of everything that's been mentioned, but obviously traffic, stormwater, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'll just kind of put a pin in all of the things that the public has said and my fellow board members. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to echo essentially everything the board members have said tonight, as well as the public, and double down on something that Phil Devine said. There really is something to be said about a planning board meeting having to be held at the high school and having unanimous votes taken regarding public safety, infrastructure, density, and traffic, and that cannot be considered lightly. I do not live near this project. I live in South Bellingham, but I do not live on Payne Street. Over the course of the last few months, I've gotten to know that area very well. I have been helping out a senior in town that fell ill. He lives on Payne Street. And I realized pretty quickly how dangerous it can be to live on Payne Street. Just doing chores around the house for this gentleman, in simple tasks like bringing a trash barrel to the curb on Payne Street, it's incredibly dangerous, and that is without your project. So the residents on Payne Street, Rentham Road, and our neighbors in Woonsocket, they seriously have to be considered. And a concern was raised tonight regarding ledge and blasting. As a blaster myself, I'm not blind to the fact that accidents can happen and accidents do happen. Just next door in Rentham last week, there was a fly rock incident where a blaster put a boulder in 495. So if and when there's blasting happening on your project, that is a major concern. And if you're a resident worried about it and you're in a butter, you have a right and you should request a seismograph be placed at the base of your foundation to measure overblast and air pressure, essentially sound and vibration, to ensure that your foundations are not being damaged. So if there's any blasting done on this project, it's going to be a major concern of mine, as well as all the other concerns that were raised tonight. Thank you.
You guys are going to accept the responsibility?
What was that?
I'm in a butter, and right now my house is in nice shape, nice walls, the whole bit. So you guys start blasting on that ledge. I'm sitting on that ledge. So what's going to happen when they start blasting? Are you going to pay for the cracks in my walls and all that? Sure. We will not be doing the blasting. I like the applicant to answer that.
So,
Who's going to be responsible?
So look, Nick, I think the question was regarding the seismic meters. That was the first one, if who's paying for that. So that would be the first question. You mentioned it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a blaster in the state, you have to follow regulations. Blasting in the state is overseen by the state fire marshal. The developer, if they have a project in town that requires blasting, they would pay for a blasting company to come in and conduct the blasting operations. Now, those blasters would be required, the blasters that the developer would be paying for, to place seismographs on foundations within a certain distance of the blasting project.
Well,
So it would be a cost of the applicant.
I lived in Cumberland before I came here, right near the quarry down Manville Hill. Now, they were doing a lot of blasting in there, as you well know. And to try to get someone to come over and make up for the cracks and everything else that was happening on our property, you can't do it. You need a lot of money to pay that.
It's a major concern, absolutely.
Because me, right now, I'm sitting right on the border, right up on the edge. And you're going to be doing some blasting. Hello? Where do I stand?
So may I just make a suggestion that, this blasting comment has been a concern. So applicant, can you note this and perhaps formulate, a discussion point for this and an answer for a future meeting date. Can we do that?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Well, in Cumberland, what we did, after fighting town hall and all that, what they did is they limited the size of the blast to knock it down, which helped out a lot. You may want to do that right here.
Thank you.
We will look into that, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming and participating. I'm going to echo a lot of the comments, starting with the comments made by our state rep and all of you. But I want to give my feelings first. You mentioned that you have done developments, correct me if I'm wrong, in Brockton, in Chelsea, in Somerville, in Boston, and in Quincy. Is that correct?
Among others, yes.
Sir, we're not any of those towns. Okay? We're a community of less than 18,000. We love what we have here, and we treasure it, and bear that in mind. My opinion also is 7 years ago, we voted for a little over 400 units of 1.5-story, over 55 triplexes to be built in the perimeter of the golf course. This is not what I voted for. I don't believe it's what a lot of people voted for. So that's a process we have to work through. I was also educated tonight about the history of Payne Street, the history of your land at the Wampanoags, and also the potential for a land trust in Rentham, and that is something we'll look at. I'd like to close with the fact that, yes, I've heard your concerns about blasting, traffic, density, affordability, public safety, water, stormwater, sewage, legal aspects of a document that was signed earlier, 7 years ago, the overlay district that we'll look into, affordability, and the legality of the golf course. So just quickly surmising what the board has said, we echo your comments, and we've heard them, and the applicant has heard them. And literally, this is the first inning of a baseball game, picking up what the applicant said initially. And I just should let the applicant know, this may not be a 9-inning game. We could go into extra innings. This will be a long process. You have to keep coming back and be active in this process. I can't stress that enough. You know, someone jokingly mentioned, you know, I may quote unquote hate them for a question. There's no bad question. So whatever question you have, please ask it. We'll use the same format that we've used before when trying to rotate the questions and not have them asked more than once or twice. But we've heard you, they've heard you, and I want to thank you again for participating. Rob, what is the next step here?
So I think there was a lot of helpful discussion, a lot of comments that the applicant should look at. What I would recommend, since we have to have the meeting in the auditorium to accommodate the amount of people, we're coming up against graduations and such, so we're getting to a kind of a tough time. What I would recommend to give the applicant some time to look at these items and continue to discuss with town staff as far as public safety, I'd recommend continuing this to May 22nd. That's when we have this high school auditorium available.
Do I have a motion? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
For the audience,
Can I ask one question?
yes, sir, to be polite, yes, sir.
I would like to know, what are they going to do if they start the project and we fall on hard times, are we going to end up owning building skeletons, holes in the ground? Are they going to bond it? Are they going to insure it? Are they going to protect the town financially before they start?
I mean, it's a private development, so I would recommend, I mean, if you want to respond to that maybe at the next meeting regarding, there are definitely stipulations in our bylaws and in our decisions as far as making sure that sites do become secured, but maybe that can be another discussion for the next meeting. There's a motion on the floor to continue. Okay,
Sure.
fair enough.
There'll be conditions if and when, I want to stress that, if and when we get to that point.